What is up, y'all, and welcome to Theist Helpline, the show where we talk to theists about what they believe in and why, but the subjects themselves have yet to come. You'll see those in the description afterwards. And so, welcome, y'all. In fact, I'll play my made-up music. I should go and select a music this upcoming week. Yes, welcome to Theist Helpline. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, hit that bell icon to all so that you can get reminders to see our premieres or join our live streams like this one right here. What's up, y'all? Sending love out to my co-host James W. You can also tag me in chat while we are going on if you want to see your comment on screen at Amy Newman with your thoughts, questions, and one-liners or anything that we're going on. I'm going fast because I want to. Unfortunately, I'm running on Amy time, and I want to get there as soon as I can. I need to find also. Normally, they send an invite, and I see. Well, maybe this button will work. We'll find out. Anyway, how are you all doing? And I hope you're ready for some fun. Let's see. Yes, many ways to support the channel. You can send in a super chat and we'll dance around, interact with them, and I'll give you a shout out, as well as super thanks on the re-upload. There are channel membership where we have our evolving badge system. Really want to do new biology videos, really anti-creation videos, same. Nonetheless, our evolving badge system, thank you to all of our channel members for helping out, as well as our Patrons at patreon.com/Amy Newman, helping keep the lights on and helping support us create even more content. Like, hopefully, more upcoming. We have amazing clips and shorts that I now want to, ooh la la, why not skirts? But yes, that I am hoping to release. I just want to figure out how to better put in the initial art that you see at the beginning, because it's not letting me do that. And if not, I guess it'll just be my whole face for a bunch of videos, but that's okay. And James's intermittently, his wonderful face. And yeah, sending love to everyone out there. I am going to, as well as, my final shout out to Azo and Chris and Dale and davegar and Rachel and Ian and Regos and everyone, our mods. And let's get to it. I'm going to see. Ooh, it does take me right there. Sent entire screen. Hello. Just want to make sure. Video. Yep, that should be good. Okie dokie.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Theist Helpline. Your friendly and helpful hosts of the Theist Helpline on November 3rd, 2024 are, in alphabetical order, Amy Newman, who is known for her trademark slogan, Sending Love, is a professional comedian and skeptic who hosts debates, interviews, and conversations on her YouTube channel. She also creates educational and other important content. IX is a Tom Unboxes subscriber and former atheist community of Discorded men who enjoys long walks through evolutionary, biology-inspired computer science, archaeological, academic, biblical criticisms, and so on. Jefferson Spatchcock is an atheist inquisitor and intellectual who has particular expertise in thoroughly analyzing and reviewing debates, often from the comfort of his genuine lazy boy chair. Planet Peterson is a well-known author, educator, science communicator, and debater. Evolution and young Earth creationism are but two of his many specialties. I'm Randolph Richardson. I'm an atheist activist from British Columbia, Canada. I advocate for the equality and normalization of people who don't believe in deities, which entails advocating for fair justice, freedom, and critical thinking for everyone. I'm also the founding president of the Canadian Atheists, the national organization that promotes atheism and agnosticism as culturally common aspects of Canadian society. Taco, the visionary organizer of the Theist Helpline, this show, is the premier atheist presuppositional apologist, pope of evidism, and, according to him, a really bad philosopher, and I've told him before I disagree with him on that. T-Jump, Tom Jump, is the founder of an atheist church called the Church of the Best Possible World, which is based on his model of objective morality. It has the goal of doing what Abrahamic churches should be doing but are not, helping people by providing affordable housing. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Really glad to see so many people here. And before we just start the show, I'm wondering if Amy Newman or T-Jump or Taco has anything new to share. And just before we get into that, I'll remind people that our sponsors are the Canadian Atheists and also the Politics Discord, who provides this wonderful stage for us. To read everybody's links, you can go into the theisthelpline.com website and click on About Us, and you'll see a list of hosts, all of us, with our various links. So you can find out more about Tom Jump's Church of the Best Possible World, for example. So did anybody have anything they wanted to add before we begin?
I just hope that everyone had a lot of sugar this Halloween, and I'm looking forward to a lot of, I'm sure, amazing arguments that are going to convince us that God exists.
Yes, fantastic. This is our first show after Halloween, or Old Hallows Eve. T-Jump, did you have anything you wanted to announce? I'm going to guess it's potato. As usual. Taco, is there anything you wanted to mention before we began?
I'm all hopped up on Mountain Dew and cookie bars.
Testing.
Oh, we can hear you now, T-Jump. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. All right, Taco, who should we bring up first?
Yeah, Some Hobo had his hand up. Welcome up, Some Hobo.
Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind?
Yes.
Maybe encountering some audio problems. Did you want to bring somebody else up and try him again a little later?
Sure, we got ADJ in the audience. That's always a fun one. Some Hobo, you're welcome back up. Just it's probably your mic. You might need to reconnect.
ADJ, welcome. Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind?
Hello. Taco, I wanted to ask you a question. So could you go into a little bit more of elaboration on your quantum field theory and how you think that's a necessary condition for the universe?
Yeah. So what do you want to know about it?
Just elaborate for me. So how'd you come to that conclusion that it's true?
Yeah, so everything consists of energy of some sort. The energy is a part of the field, right? The field has to exist in all possible worlds. You can't even imagine something that doesn't consist of energy that wouldn't be a product of that field. It has to exist in all possible worlds. It is the necessary being.
And that's how you've just come to the conclusion, is because you just deem it as necessary, therefore it's necessary in all possible worlds, therefore you've just come to the conclusion that's okay.
Philosophical and metaphysical conclusion based off of overwhelming empirical evidence.
What overwhelming and empirical evidence would that be?
Yeah, quantum field theory.
That's not empirical.
Okay, get out.
But that's not empirical evidence. Like, if you're going into a theory, like, well, what you'd be saying then is that you've observed these
Get
things
out.
on
This
an empirical
is nonsense.
level.
I don't care.
Wait a
which
second.
you haven't done. It'd be saying that you've empirically measured an electronic magnetic field, which is part of the quantum field theory.
ADJ.
The thing is, we don't actually
ADJ, I
physically
don't care.
measure those
I'm not
things.
dealing with your science
Hey, guys.
denial.
Hey,
I really don't care.
Hey, ADJ, why is it that quantum physics is not credible in your view? You said something along that
Again, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just asking how Taco has arrived at the conclusion that it is.
Well, you did make a claim a moment ago about that, so that's why I'm asking you. How did you?
Sorry, are we just trying to do a bait and switch? So Taco tries to run away from justifying his, gish gallop,
Science
and instead of his,
there's no gish
instead
gallop.
of his response is
You're not-
get out.
No, we're not doing this. You're not going to make shit up. So there's no gish gallop. There's no nonsense going on here. I'm not on the urine there is, but I'm not dealing with your science denial nonsense. You asked me how I came to this conclusion. I told you is backed up by immense empirical evidence, mathematical evidence. It's backed up by philosophy. It's even got all sorts of philosophies built around it. You have no idea what you're talking about, ADJ. And in fact, all of science ultimately breaks down to this one thing, right? You're just making shit up. No one cares.
Wait, what was the question?
He's asking me to justify. He said that quantum field theory isn't empirical evidence.
Yeah, I wanted to know from him how he justifies that.
Wait, no, ADJ, what was the question? Is he speaking? I can't hear him.
He's unmuted now, but he's not speaking.
He wanted to know how quantum physics is necessary in all possible worlds.
ADJ, are you there? Is he speaking? I still can't hear him.
He probably ran away because he got muted for making shit up.
Oh, okay.
ADJ, you can talk. You're unmuted.
Yeah, there's no.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, what was your question?
We can hear you now.
Sorry, my Discord interface is messed up. So when you're talking about empirical evidence, Taco, what's an example of that?
ADJ, stop talking to Taco. What was your original question?
What I'm asking, I'm asking a follow-up question to him. So when you're talking about empirical evidence, what empirical evidence would you use as an example to justify that?
Wait, no, justify what?
When he's talking about we have empirical evidence to justify this, what form of empirical evidence you have to justify
what?
Justify that his quantum theory, quantum field theory is the necessary condition for existence.
So
philosophical position.
Wait. So there isn't any empirical evidence for necessary beings. Necessary beings are philosophical concepts. There is
He just said that there was. So is Taco wrong?
Specifically about quantum field theory and quantum.
Sorry,
there
is Taco allowed to speak for himself?
So there is empirical evidence of quantum fields, like the Casimir effect. Quantum field theory has empirical evidence. There's no empirical evidence for the necessary being part. Is that specifically the part you were?
All right, so Taco was wrong on that.
No.
You said it's a philosophical position.
Hold up.
I'll just ask you a question again. So what empirical evidence do you have for it?
Stop talking. So Taco misunderstood you. He was specifically talking about empirical evidence for quantum fields. That has an abundance of empirical evidence. Well, your question was specifically about the necessary being part. Is that correct? I think he missed that part.
Yeah, I've heard Taco numerously say that that a quantum field is the necessary conditions for all existence.
And you're asking for what is the justification that it's the necessary being?
I'm not really
okay.
T-Jump. I don't know who you are. I'm just interested in talking to Taco. If Taco can't speak for himself and he needs an adult to speak for him,
already addressed
I guess
what
I'll
you
have to talk
said.
to you.
So was I correct? Your question is specifically referring to the necessary being part, and that's the part you're asking about.
Well, necessary being. He's saying that. I'd like for him to clarify what he means by that. But from what I'm gathering is that's what he's trying to establish it as.
Stop. So you were specifically asking just about the necessary being part. That was your question, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Taco?
And just so you know, you're talking to an entire panel here.
Directly, right?
And you're talking to an entire panel here. It's not that somebody's covering for somebody else. It's you're talking to a whole panel.
It seems like people are covering for other people. Taco's pretty quiet. I asked him a specific question, and it seems like he's saying something. I'm just saying, you're saying something, but you haven't been able to prove it.
I already addressed
you
your
said
question.
It was empirical. Oh, I think that's about it, Taco. I think it's easy to say that you're a hack.
Well, can I actually? Okay.
No, he wants
Go
to
ahead, Amy. Go ahead, Amy. Let's hear your observation.
Well, the whole point is that presuppositionalism is kind of ridiculous. And so Taco has actually taken their arguments, which are ridiculous, and have said what would be an actual foundation if there was a necessary being. Necessary beings, as T-Jump said, physicists don't use that type of language. But the point that Taco is making...
Actually, that's not true. There's a few physicists who do claim that if there is a necessary being, that it would be quantum field, field, or
that's what your point is. That's what
quantum vacuum, or something of that nature. Whatever that fundamental form of the energy is, right?
And that is what my point is that what you're saying is that if there was an actual necessary being, where would we find it? In some sort of physical phenomenon. We would find it in something like a quantum field theory. And so both presuppositionalism is ridiculous and apologists don't have anything.
Actually, I think most non-physicists also don't use the term necessary being.
I wouldn't say most physicists use it, but I have heard several mainstream leading physicists use it.
It looks like some hobo's ready to try again here. Welcome back, some hobo. How are you? What's on your mind?
Well, can you hear me good this time?
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Perfect. What's been on my mind is I went to a deliverance retreat recently, and which is just a place where they cast demons out. And while I was there, I met people who could actually see demons, and I questioned them about it. What it was like for them, and it seemed pretty consistent. Like, people would see things, like things get thrown around the room. One guy, a bed was moving around. Just to clarify, I haven't experienced any of this.
There's quite often a lot of illusions and things done. There's a lot of scammers run these kinds of things, and they make it appear that people are defying gravity and the laws of physics in general and things like that. But there's a lot of trickery that can be done. Are you familiar with James Randi, Randi?
I'm not.
Okay, I would suggest look him up and take a look at the various documentaries he's done. He's actually a professional musician who later on began assisting scientists because people were using magic to try to play tricks on the scientists to prove that they could do supernatural things. So what he did is he's been educating people on how those tricks work, what people are doing to make it seem that they have magical powers that they don't have. He's been making major contributions to skepticism and the fields of skepticism in science for many, many years, and really helped out a lot because once you explain to the scientists, here's the problem, here's what these people are doing, then they would set up the environment differently so that they wouldn't be able to use those tricks to prove to make it appear that they had these kind of special powers. So I think you may find that very interesting. It may be particularly helpful if you look up exorcisms and see what he has to say on that, because I think he gets right into all of that.
What was his name again?
James Randi, James Randi.
Is he kind of an older guy? Because I might have seen him.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, but he's the contributions he's made are still valid. They're excellent. Do take a look at it, because once you see all of this and take a look at how magic is done in general, it will be you'll see right through the nonsense whenever you're at these kinds of events later, and then you won't be fooled.
Yeah, I used to be a magician. Like, for about 2 years, I'd go out to bars and do magic and stuff. And I used to be an extreme skeptic. And at this event, I never
extreme skeptic.
They never did any magic or anything. There's nothing where they made it look like demons were there or anything. Maybe the stories people told, it all happened at their house.
Oh, I thought you mentioned. I'm sorry if I misunderstood. I thought earlier you were saying there were people like floating around and stuff like that. Maybe I misunderstood you.
They were talking about times they saw stuff floating around.
Yeah, it's still worthwhile looking into James Randi, especially if you have background in magic. You'll probably have a particular appreciation for what he's been doing. But I think people telling their anecdotes, you have to be really careful about that kind of thing, because people can tell you what they want to see, what they think they saw, which can correlate with what they wanted to see at the time or experience, and it may not actually be accurate. And that's where the actual tests with statistically significant numbers of subjects and whatnot is very important, because if you have 10,000 people who are, or even 1,000 people who are experiencing the same thing versus just one, then okay, and you're saying 950 out of those 1,000 people are giving a consistent response, okay, that's something to look into. But just one person or 5 people or 12 people saying this is really not enough.
Yeah.
Everything that they said could be fully explained by natural phenomenon, and when tested under scientific conditions, every single one of the claims about the supernatural has been proven false. So when they're in their own home and there's no controls, they see things they can't explain, and so their brain makes up an explanation that fits their worldview. When tested by science, their explanation fails. When in a convention where there's lots of people who have similar kinds of beliefs, they can all construct the same stories, which makes them consistent. But when tested by science, they all fail. There's never been a case where any evidence of demons has ever been shown to exist outside of the imagination of the people who believe in them.
And to go even further down the rabbit hole, the field of psychology can get into how this stuff spreads from person to person, how people are amenable to believing things that aren't true and whatnot.
But I'm now completely curious. What kind of demons do you think exist?
I see demons as a pretty broad subject, because in the ancient Greek, it just meant spirits, and then as Christianity spread, demons became a negative view. So I believe in spirits in general, and I'm open to a bunch of different cultures' views on spirits.
See, but that almost sounds like you're shopping for demons. Like, do you actually believe that there is? Because I feel like both T-Jump and Randolph gave us good reasons why we shouldn't believe in demons. I will give another reason, and that is because we should not give credit to evil spirits for doing bad deeds. And I'll tell you why. Because that lets humans off the hook. When it really was them. It's not that a bad spirit made someone do something wrong. It's that, unfortunately, they made a decision, and that decision hurt someone. And so they should take credit, not some third party that is trying to manipulate them. That would be my pushback, and I still would like to know if there's an actual demon.
What do you mean? Is there an actual demon? They're like, yeah. What do you mean? If there's an actual demon?
Well, I guess that would be. I guess I should have just ended with that. I think it's a bad concept. I think not only is it empirically unsound, but I think it lets people emotionally off the hook. So if you don't have like an actual listen. There was, this demon that came to me and told me to do blah, blah, blah. Because that's what I imagine, at least that's what they do in many of the holy texts. But all of a sudden, now demons get very vague.
Yeah, it is pretty vague, at least for me when I talk about it. So I guess I'll say this: after this experience, I do believe human nature, we're still responsible for how we act. I guess how I see demons is there's Satan, who's the one who's the leader of all demons, and in our thoughts, sometimes a demon does speak, and I think that sometimes the Holy Spirit does speak too. even though granted most of the time it's our own inner dialogue. So I think that's how we get tempted by demons.
So it is Satan.
Well, what do you mean? Like Satan's the one who's in charge of them all.
And I
But
guess my question would just be, what evidence do you have that a Satan exists?
Yeah, this isn't necessarily evidence-based. I'm just searching still from what people see in things.
James Randi will serve as a really great spirit animal for you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Seriously, do look into his stuff. I think, given that you've done some magic in the past, you'll probably have a particular appreciation for him because he does talk about magic quite a bit in his earlier works.
James Randi?
Yes, James Randi, Randi.
All right.
Nice talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Thanks for coming out. Joshua's next in queue. I'm pulling him up right now.
Joshua, welcome. Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind?
I want to challenge Taco's claim.
Oh my.
Okay.
Hey, Taco.
What's the claim and what is your challenge?
That the universal quantum field is necessary being for system.
We can't even understand you.
I think you said that the universe is a necessary being. Did I hear you right, Joshua?
No, I said, Taco, wasn't your claim that the universal quantum field is the necessary being?
Fundamental substrate would be the necessary being.
You said what?
Whatever that fundamental substrate is, which I call, and actually T-Jump calls the universal quantum field. I kind of stole it from him, but on that name specifically. But same. I mean, it's the same thing, right? I mean, it's just whatever that fundamental substrate is, that quantum field or quantum void, whatever that ultimately breaks down to, that fundamental form of the energy.
Okay, and what entails its necessity?
It has to exist in all possible worlds. You can't imagine anything that exists or could exist that doesn't consist of energy, right? There's no possible thing that exists without consisting of energy.
I agree with that part. So, would you say it?
Then you agree with my position and T-Jump's position and several physicists'
Earlier
positions.
you made the claim that it's responsible for the current state of the universe we live in, correct?
That's correct, yes.
This guy's so
It is a
angry.
Is that what
necessary being.
entails its
Everything would
necessity?
derive from it.
Okay, is the current state of the universe that we live in right now, does that exist in all possible worlds?
No, why would it?
No.
Why would it need to? How does that even relate to the position?
Such a dumb question.
No, it's just a question. If the necessity of the universal quantum field is based off of the current of the creation of the current state of the universe that we live in, if there's a possible world where the current state of the universe we live in doesn't exist, there goes its necessity.
No,
Doesn't
it has
follow.
nothing to do with the current state of the world. What gibberish is this? The quantum field can create lots of different kinds of worlds. So no, this could be the only one like ours. It has nothing to do with the necessary being a quantum field.
Sorry, I said that was a dumb question. I get it. You just don't understand what you're talking about, and so that prompted
No,
you to
and
ask
you're
these
saying-
questions. I get it. I'm sorry. That was my bad there.
Okay, so your claim would be it's necessary regardless?
Yes, the necessary field is necessary in all possible worlds. This world is one possible world, so it's in this possible world, but it's also in all of the other possible worlds, which are all different.
Then what would entail its necessity?
That it's in all possible worlds. That's what
That's
entails
it?
its necessity.
Is
Yes,
there any way
that's
contingent?
literally the definition of a necessary being. Like, just if you go to any
Is there any-
philosophical definition, it's literally just defined as a being that exists in all possible worlds. That's what it means to be necessary.
And it can't be contingent, right?
What? No. Just a necessary being is just a thing that exists in all possible worlds. That's all it means. That is the full extent of the definition. There's no not contingent in there. It's just a being that exists.
But I'm reading
in
it
all
right now and it
possible worlds.
says cannot fail to do so.
Yes,
Wouldn't
that's
that
what it
entail
means. That literally
contingency?
exists in all possible worlds means it does not exist in one of those. So
Okay,
exists
so
in
it
all
can't be
possible worlds.
contingent.
No, I don't think you understand what you just read. So when it says cannot fail to do so, that means there can't be a possible world where this thing does not exist in it. That's all it means.
No, I agree with that. So it can't be contingent, right?
No, contingent is irrelevant. There's no contingent anywhere in that. Nothing in that says anything
So
about
it could be
contingent. All
susceptible
it
to
says
failure?
is, yeah, it could be a potato. A potato that exists in all possible worlds would be a necessary being.
No, I'm talking about specifically universal quantum field. Is it any way susceptible to failure?
That doesn't even make sense. That is an incoherent sentence. It exists in all
What?
possible worlds, and there's no possible world where it does not exist.
Okay, so it's not susceptible to failure.
That doesn't make sense. Failure is like when a bridge collapses because there's too much force on it. Failure is like when
And
you're testing something and it doesn't work. Like, that is not a coherent sentence.
It's a pretty simple question.
Listen, he
No, it's
not.
needs
Otherwise, I've not
God
been.
for a math exam, so he really needs you to answer this. Can't fail.
Can't fail. There cannot be a possible world that the quantum field does not exist. I think that's what you
Okay,
mean
beautiful.
when you say fail. Not what the word fail means,
Yeah.
but I think that's what you
Yeah,
mean.
sure. All right. So is there any empirical evidence that proves that it's the necessary being responsible for all things?
No, there is no empirical evidence of necessary beings existing for any context ever.
So how do you hold on to this claim?
The philosophical definition based on the necessary existence of energy has nothing to do with empirical evidence.
Wait, then how can you make the claim that it's responsible for the universe?
There are other kinds of evidence other than empirical evidence, like philosophical evidence. You can use philosophical evidence even if you don't have empirical evidence.
Okay, then what is to say that God isn't the necessary being?
Because there's no evidence at all for God, no philosophical evidence, no empirical evidence, no any evidence.
And that's debatable.
Yes, that's why we're here. Do you have any evidence?
Would your position be into infinite regression of dependent things?
No. What does that have to do with
Sorry,
the evidence?
guys.
What is your evidence for God? Like we've just been saying there's a necessary being, so clearly there's not an infinite regression because it goes back to the necessary being, which is the quantum field. Do you have any evidence for God? Because we have lots of evidence for quantum fields existing.
Is the quantum field conscious?
No.
Okay, then how are we conscious if we lead back to it?
Wow.
Do you have a stomach?
Yeah.
How do we have a stomach if stomachs aren't in the quantum field? Oh my God! It's like,
Well, I'm asking you.
Exactly.
oh my God! So there's this thing called emergent properties. You have a stomach, you have a heart, you have eyes, you have poop. None of those things are in the necessary thing. You don't even believe God has like a stomach, right? How do we have a stomach if the necessary being doesn't have a stomach?
Kind of what I'm asking you, if anything.
Yes.
If there could be an if there could be a regression going back all the way to the necessary being, and you just said the necessary being isn't conscious, then how can we be conscious if it goes back to it?
Bro,
He gave you the answer.
does God
Emergent
have
properties.
butt hair?
If somebody just explains
What does
to
that
you
have to do
how
with my
this
question?
process works from the Big Bang to today and how the stomach developed, would you no longer believe in your God?
Why my stomach? I didn't ask about my stomach. I asked about.
Well, I'm asking you, right?
For
So
example,
Well, I was trying to lead into this. So, does God have a stomach? Like
In the
the
after the
organ.
incarnation, yeah.
No. I mean, like the previous God, the necessary being God. Does the God before Jesus have a stomach?
Like the non-physical one.
Oh, like a physical organ that is a stomach.
No, I wouldn't think so.
No, but he created this other stuff called matter, and matter combined to produce emergent things like organs, right? So God, the necessary being, doesn't need to have all of the things we have. Doesn't need to have those. So a quantum field can produce like matter and energy, and that matter and energy can combine to make other stuff like stomachs and consciousness. And those are emergent properties. They don't exist in the fundamental nature of reality. They're a product of combinations of other things like matter and energy. So just like you believe the God doesn't have a stomach, because physical stomachs, are not a part of the necessary nature of reality. The quantum field doesn't need to have consciousness, because consciousness is like a stomach. It's an emergent property. It's not fundamental. It is a product of other things.
Okay, so why does that completely cut out the God theory?
Because God's conscious. And consciousness is like a stomach. It's an emergent thing. It is a product of combinations of other smaller things. So if God has a consciousness, God is contingent.
Wait, how does that make God contingent?
Because consciousness is by definition contingent. Consciousness is a combination of
What
other
about
smaller
omniscience?
things. But omniscience is not a thing. Literally impossible.
Okay, but for God, I'm saying.
Omniscience.
It's literally impossible for God. Like there's a proof of this. It's called
Okay,
Gödel's incompleteness
theoretically
theorem.
speaking, what omniscience be contingent?
Omniscience would be contingent on consciousness.
Also true. That's a good one, Randolph. That's good.
How?
That's a good point. How can you know things if you have no consciousness?
But no one's saying that God could ever be unconscious.
No. So can you be unconscious, have no consciousness, and also be omniscient?
No.
So omniscience is contingent on consciousness.
Indeed.
Mhm. Yeah, but with my God claim, that wouldn't be.
Oh, you just said it would be. What do you mean it wouldn't be? So can God be
No, if
omniscient
we have a
and not?
being. No, I wasn't talking about God in that specific example that you just gave. Let me clarify. With my God claim, God can't ever be not conscious.
Right. So
He can
can
never
a
sleep.
thing be omniscient and not be conscious?
When you're asking me that, are you asking me about God?
Yes, I'm asking about anything ever. Can God have all knowledge and not be conscious?
No, he can't be not conscious.
Right. So there's no way for him to have omniscience and not be conscious.
You're confusing with what I'm saying. I'm saying he can't ever lose his
Can the
consciousness.
quantum field be omniscient and have all knowledge, even though it has no consciousness?
No.
It's because omniscience is contingent on consciousness.
Yeah.
So omniscience is contingent. God is contingent.
I just said that he can't lose his consciousness. He can't just like get out.
Right, we don't care about that part. We were caring about, is omniscience a necessary property or is it a contingent property? If it's a necessary property, that means it isn't contingent on anything. If it's a contingent property, that means it's not a part of the necessary being. Omniscience is contingent on consciousness, therefore omniscience can't be a part of the necessary being because it's contingent.
Also, just to take it back to something that T-Jump and Taco have been saying, this is why quantum field fluctuations and quantum field theory would apply, because it is not contingent, unlike everything that a god seems to be.
Is there empirical evidence that completely cuts out the God theory?
I mean, each god is a very unique and specific thing.
What
Some
evidence
gods-
would convince you that no gods exist? What do you want to see? What do you want to hear?
I'm just asking if there's any form of like evidence in which it proves without a reasonable doubt that God
I
is.
think there's a
like
bunch, right?
reason.
But just look at the trees, right? But
Yeah,
what
show me
evidence
some.
would convince you that no gods exist, right? That's why I'm asking you, because I look at the trees and I know no gods exist, right? So I could say that to you, but you seem to be corrupted by religion, and so you wouldn't think the same, right? And so I'm asking you, what scientific evidence would convince you that no gods exist?
Well, I mean, evidence doesn't work that way. Evidence doesn't disprove things. Evidence provides evidence for things. So you're not going to find empirical evidence that geocentrism is wrong. You're going to find empirical evidence that heliocentrism is right. So there's no such thing as evidence that disproves anything. There's evidence for things, not against things.
You could draw conclusions from large data sets, though.
What's up,
We could all be in the
Beamsy?
matrix,
What's
so
up,
it can't disprove
Sumami?
anything. So you can't
What's
like
up,
have
Young
evidence
Victoria?
against
Got any
geocentrism
swearing,
because we could be in the
anyone?
matrix or whatever.
Maya.
It's just
Woo.
the evidence we have indicates heliocentrism is true. And so there's never any evidence that disproves a hypothesis. It just doesn't work that way. You have evidence for a hypothesis. There's lots of evidence for quantum fields. There's lots of evidence for the fundamental nature of reality not being conscious, because consciousness is an emergent property. There's lots of evidence that it's not omniscient, because omniscience is contingent. But there's no evidence that disproves God. There's no evidence that disproves the quantum field. You can't disprove things with evidence.
Is there any empirical evidence in which we can see, like going back before the Big Bang was 400,000 years that NASA is missing, that the quantum field is responsible?
Yes, there's evidence that the quantum field existed before the Big Bang. Yes. There is no evidence a consciousness did. What?
Is responsible for the current state of the universe that we live in, like it's the cause of the Big Bang, for example.
Yeah, so there's evidence that the quantum field is the most fundamental thing that is responsible for our current state and everything else.
Can I see it?
Sure. It's called quantum field theory. There's evidence of the Casimir effect. Google the Casimir effect. It's great evidence of quantum fields.
Meet me in the bathroom.
Google the evidence of solving general relativity without the time variable, which means it's outside of time. So yeah, go for it.
Casimir effect. How can it be outside of time if the time is our constant?
Because time and space is a single kind of field, and there are other kinds of field that exist independent of space-time. So quantum fields exist independent of space-time because there are other fields other than space-time.
Gotcha. I'm gonna go. You said the Casimir.
Casimir. Casimir.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna look into this. I might be back later because I don't want to fight you on it if I haven't read about it.
All right.
My brother, appreciate you.
So, is there anything that would convince you that no gods exist real fast?
Talk, I ain't gonna lie, from the conversations we had, I don't think you could convince me. T-Jump probably could.
I'm thinking the words you used are you don't want to come back and fight T-Jump until you've read on the subject. I'm curious why your expectation is that it would be a fight. Like, if you actually read good materials on it.
No, that's not what I meant. Like, getting pushed back.
I feel like it would be more likely that you'd be in agreement with T-Jump, because T-Jump is extremely well read on these subjects.
No, what he said made sense. He wasn't arguing about that. He wasn't deliberately saying like fight in a combative way. He was just like a debate, just a debate.
Oh, okay.
For getting some pushback.
Conversed on it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll let someone else come up. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for coming up, Joshua. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
We've got Mary Dilf.
Mary Dilf? Hello, Mary. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, Mary Dilf. Yeah, we can hear you. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for joining us. What's on your mind?
So, I don't know. Is this like specific help? Like, I needed dating advice. Is that something we do here or no?
Well, normally not, but if it's quick, we'd be happy to try to push you in the right direction if we can. What's going on?
So like, as you see, I'm married, right? I've been divorced once. It was over Discord. Like, I married her, and then we divorced within like a month. But this new marriage, I'm just trying to figure out if she's the right one, because I don't want that to happen again. You know. So obviously, I met her on politics. But like, the thing is, I just enjoy women. You know, I don't know if I'm ready. You know, I enjoy a lot of different women.
Okay, so you're going to have to you're already married and you're looking to meet somebody else.
Well, I just say we're married. We're not really. This one is more just like just a serious relationship. So.
Okay, well, one of the most important things when it comes to serious matters such as marriage to actually not use the terms flippantly when you're engaging in a relationship with somebody else. Relationships take time. It's there isn't going to be a quick and easy way to find out if that's the right person for you. The expectation that somebody must be 100% the right person, I think, is unrealistic. Hollywood tries to depict that a lot. You're going to find, I think what tends to work for most people is that you generally agree on more things with your partner, but you may have different points of view as well, and the quality of the relationship can be marked by how well you can converse with your partner on subjects that you disagree with as well as the ones you agree with. And having some different interests as well as similar interests and same interests, I think, is very healthy and is a good thing. So it's just something you're going to have to put the time and effort into and find out over time. Spending more time with them is probably going to be the best thing you can do.
I would actually recommend the book Polysecure. There are other kinds of relationships other than monogamous kinds, and they're perfectly natural and normal. And if you understand what your needs are and you can communicate those with your partners and they're okay with that, then that's perfectly fine. So read books like Polysecure by Jessica Fern. And
what's your thoughts on this? So, like,
Jump is giving excellent advice here. I fully agree with that. I think that's a perfect addition to what I've said.
okay, I'm looking for like a Discord wife, and then like that's just separate from my real life, you know. So then I can still have a wife in real life, and then I have my Discord.
Is this a troll? This is totally
Same
Okay.
thing.
Most important thing is that all the parties you're involved with know this about you, so that there's nobody keeping secrets on stuff like this. Because with this kind of open honesty, you will have better relationships down the road.
Okay, sounds good. I think,
I've been married 30 years, and there's stuff I didn't know about my wife until many years later, and same that she didn't know about me, because it's just not possible to know everything about your partner or partners in the beginning. That's just how life goes.
yeah. Okay, and then I just wanted to make a comment on the guy that was up here earlier about like spirits and that. What was it?
Your audio is starting to cut out a little bit. Could you maybe come a little closer to the mic?
Oh, is this better?
Much better, yeah. Go ahead. What was your comment about the other, what was said earlier?
He was talking about like the devil, and you guys are saying, oh, there's no
demons
evidence.
and stuff. Yeah, okay.
So I like, if there's multiple reports, how is that not, evidence? Like, you're saying, oh, you need a certain amount of people to say this. Like, there's been thousands of reports, but you're saying you need
So what I would suggest researching is the term statistical significance. So it's important that you have a large enough sample size that's appropriate for what it is you're measuring to be able to make a determination that's more credible. And the larger the sample size, the more credible your conclusion can be. That's what
I would disagree here. So,
okay, go ahead.
Testimony is only evidence for things that have an empirical basis. If you saw a dog or an elephant or giraffe, that's good based off of testimony. If you're saying you're seeing miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, supernatural, UFOs, no amount of testimony is sufficient, because human mind is susceptible to lots of problems. So like, if you see an optical illusion, doesn't matter how many people see the painting move, the painting is not moving. So in order for something to be evidence, you need to have empirical evidence of it, independent of testimony, and only after you have an independent empirical basis can testimony be a justification to believe that somebody actually saw that thing.
Oh yeah, I agree with this. I wasn't meaning to say something that would disagree with that. I guess like if people are, if they're measuring in psychology, social psychology, then people's opinions would probably be more relevant. But in pure scientific matters, definitely T-Jump is exactly right here. Yeah.
Okay.
But Mary Dilf, do look into statistical significance because that will be probably helpful to understanding why studies are value having more samples, larger samples than less.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate it. Thanks for your help, guys.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time.
I just want to shout out my wife because she's watching. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Say hello to her. That's great. Hello, Mary Dilf's wife.
There's a joke in there
Glad
somewhere
she's tuned
about
in
her
as well. Sorry, what's that talk about?
liking to
That was an
watch.
interesting one. And then we've got Rizhan.
Rizan. If we're
He's server
pronouncing
muted.
your name, please correct us. It looks like he's got an extra dial next to his microphone.
Yeah, he's server muted, so I'll unmute you, but I don't know why you were muted.
Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind? And please correct us on the pronunciation of your name if we got Rizan wrong.
Yeah, it's just Rizhan, but
Rizan.
I
Okay.
just have like one main question. So earlier, T-Jump and you guys were saying that quantum fields are like necessary, so they exist in all possible worlds. So what type of necessity are you talking about here?
The philosophical kind, where a necessary being is a being that exists in all possible worlds. That's what necessary
Like
means.
I'm
There's
asking
not
about
like
the model scope.
what models. That's just the definition of necessary. There's no
No,
like
the model scope.
a modal scope. What do you mean modal scope? Necessary just means exists in all possible worlds. There's not like an alternative
Because there's
definition with
different
different
types of
scope.
necessity.
Not for
There's-
necessary beings. There's not. What are you talking about?
There's epistemic necessity. There's logical necessity. Metaphysical.
So epistemic
Pretty
necessity is how you know things. Logical necessity is like defining systems of logic. There is no real thing there. When you're talking about ontology, a necessary being is an ontology of a thing that exists in all possible worlds.
Look, so I'm just going to take it that you mean metaphysical necessity, but also just to correct you on logical necessity. Logical necessity just when the negation of that proposition or the negation of the truth of the proposition entails some kind of contradiction. Just to correct you there. So
No,
if you
that's
take
incorrect
quantum
actually.
fields to be
So that part's wrong because actually there are non-standard
is it wrong?
logics. Because there are non-standard logics that don't entail the same
Yeah, I don't
logical
hold to
necessity.
non-standard logics.
I don't care if you hold
I
to
don't
them or
hold
not.
towards
It doesn't matter if you
non-standard
hold to them or not. They're languages. And so saying that your preferred language has this entailment of this specific sentence doesn't mean it's actually necessary. It's just not relevant.
Look, I'm defining logical necessity as defined in the classical logic, which I hold to. If you
Right,
hold
and
to
you're
some kind of different
confusing
logic,
that
that's
to
fine.
actual necessity when we're talking about all possible worlds. So logical necessity is just a
Look,
language. It's
I
not
said that you
actual
meant
necessity. You were
yeah,
just
I
wrong.
said that you
I'm
meant
sorry, you were
I
just
said that
wrong.
I said that I take you mean metaphysical necessity.
Yes, we understood that part. The thing is, there was no other possible way you could have took it. Like unless you're completely ignorant of the field. Like when you're talking about a necessary being, there is no
What?
other possible candidate. Logical necessity isn't a candidate for a necessary
yes, there
being.
is.
No, there's not. Logical
Yes, there
necessity
is.
isn't a thing.
There's nomic necessity. There's nomic necessity. There's
Nomic
doxastic
necessity,
necessity.
which also doesn't in any way entail possible ways a necessary being can be. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes,
Rizan,
it does.
Can I
Okay,
ask
how?
you? Okay, no, finish your conversation, but then I want to ask you.
Look, okay, so let's just move past this point. So since you've
Nope.
already
You
established
want to
that
make
quantum
bullshit
field-
claims? Go ahead. How are those alternatives to a necessary being? Go ahead.
I'm not saying that they're alternatives to a necessary being. I'm saying that the way necessity is defined here could be different, or the types of necessity could be different.
Okay, how? Go ahead. Provide another definition.
So, for example, like for doxastic or epistemic necessity, right? It would be necessity based on what we know. And for something like nomic necessity, it would be necessity based on the laws of nature.
How does that relate to a
the laws
necessary
of
being?
physics.
How does that relate to a necessary being?
does.
What does
Wait,
the
so if
word
something-
being mean?
Wait, so if you take something, okay, so you don't think that epistemology entails ontology?
What
You
does
don't think
the
that
word being mean in
a
philosophy?
being
What
means
does
an
the word
existent thing? I mean, it's a
an
very primitive
existent
term.
thing? What does epistemology mean?
Epistemology is a theory of knowledge.
Does it exist?
I'd say knowledge exists.
No. No, epistemology does
Yes, it
not
does.
exist. No, it
And
doesn't.
knowledge exists. You so
No.
wait, you don't think that knowledge? You think that knowledge isn't an
Knowledge
existing
is not an existing thing. Knowledge is a justified true
So you
belief. It
think,
doesn't
okay,
actually exist.
you're an
There's no
epistemic
like
nihilist.
knowledge under a rock anywhere. Knowledge is a justified
I'm not
true
saying that
belief.
it's knowledge under a rock. Look, I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not even necessarily saying that knowledge is some
So
kind of
you were
concrete
wrong.
thing. I'm
You
just
were wrong.
asking,
So a being,
does knowledge
a
actually exist?
doxastic necessity cannot be a being. It's not a being.
I'm not saying that a doxastic necessity can be some kind of being. I'm
You
just
were
asking
just said
what
you
type
made an
of
argument that
necessity
there
are
is an
you holding to?
alternative definition of a necessary being, and then you gave doxastic necessity.
I'm not
and
saying that it
epistemic
was an
necessity,
alternative
which can't be
definition.
being.
I was just asking for
I
the
think he
model.
said
All right, you're
metaphysic necessity,
done.
actually.
Look, okay, so if you're talking about metaphysical, you can actually get onto something substantive. So if you're talking about metaphysical necessity, would you say that since the quantum fields are governed by the laws of nature, then the laws of nature would also be metaphysically necessary?
No, they're not governed by the laws of nature. What a stupid argument. They are the
Yeah,
laws
I'm
of
pretty
nature.
sure
And
in
no,
quantum field
Rizan,
theory, they
before
are
you go
governed
to
by the laws
something
of nature.
else, I want to know, why do you think that your God is a necessary being?
Why do I think that I mean, there's multiple arguments for why God would be a necessary being.
Why do you think? Not what are the arguments, but why do you
I mean,
think?
I'd have to give a very broad
The best
outline, but
one.
I'd have to give a very broad outline, but I just go from some kind of fact of our experience. So, for example, there are contingent things, or for example, there are cause things or condition things, and then from that, I try and establish that those condition things or cause things are put into motion or put into like where they are by some other thing external to them, and this can't go on to infinity of like a Leibnizian cosmological argument. You say that there has to be a necessary thing that explains why all the contingent things are there, and then I'd arrive at a necessary being. And for stage 2 of the argument, I'd establish some of the attributes of the necessary being.
I was going to say, but you'll notice we're just basically setting up, because now there's still no God yet. And I would even say, we don't have to get into it, but I believe that your God is a contingent thing. And so why do you think your God is not?
Why do you think that is contingent? Why do you think that God is contingent?
I would even say I know that God is contingent, but that is a belief. And why do I believe that God's contingent? Because I believe that our gods come from us. I think that they are humanistic gods. They even have human-like traits. And so there's a good chance that if we were to die and all of our media, the books and the movies that had all of these gods, so too would they cease to exist.
And to be clear, you said
Okay, so
humanistic, not humanist.
So what's the justification for that claim?
Because that seems...
There's no evidence that any of the properties in a god exist fundamentally. It's all just been made up by humans. There's no evidence of consciousnesses existed fundamentally that's made up by humans. All of the evidence indicates that consciousness is an emergent property like potatoes and pineapples. And so to claim that there is a conscious entity that is necessary is equally as stupid as claiming that there is a necessary pineapple. That's how stupid your argument is. Omniscience is contingent on consciousness, which means that property is necessarily of a contingent being and can't be in a necessary being. So your God can't be omniscient. Having desires and intentions are contingent on consciousness. So those things are a part of a contingent being. So if your God has intentions and desires, it's contingent. So all of the properties of your God are contingent, and you've just slapped this label on it, claiming it's necessary with no evidence because it makes you feel good.
Okay, so I just take that to be...
Just to clarify, there is lots of evidence that quantum fields could be necessary. That makes sense. Quantum fields can be necessary.
Yeah,
there's evidence they exist this time.
Even before we go to that, I just take that to be a lot of nonsense, because again, contingency isn't defined as some kind of dependency. I just take contingency to mean something that could fail to exist. The definition of contingency you're using is just an idiosyncratic definition that nobody uses. Obviously, it's going to be the case that if something has X part and it has a Y part, there's going to be some kind of internal dependency. But the internal dependency wouldn't entail some kind of contingency unless it depends on something that is external to it or ontologically prior to it for its existence. And I also hold to divine simplicity, right? So I hold that God's consciousness is just going to be identical to his active omniscience.
I already addressed all that. I already addressed everything you just said. I already addressed everything you just said.
You didn't address it.
I literally did. Stop talking. So consciousness is contingent on other prior things that are ontologically prior. Consciousness is made of other stuff, like a pineapple. A pineapple is made of other stuff. Therefore, like I literally said this, to claim that consciousness is a part of a necessary being is equally as stupid as claiming a pineapple is a part of a necessary being, because all evidence indicates consciousness and pineapples are ontologically made, they're ontologically contingent on other stuff. So to claim that a necessary being has consciousness is to claim that a necessary being is a pineapple. It's that stupid. The only thing that we have evidence that is not contingent on other things is quantum fields. That's the only thing we have evidence that is actually outside of space-time and is actually fundamental. Not consciousness, not omniscience, not knowledge, not intentions, not desires, not motivations. Nothing about your God could qualify as a necessary being. Nothing. It's all human properties that you slapped on this stupid label of divine simplicity, which has no basis in reality. It's just made up. I can just say a pineapple is a divinely simple thing. Is that stupid? Yes, because it's exactly the same thing you're doing. There is no evidence of any of the properties of your God even being possibility of being necessary. The only thing that has a possibility of being necessary is a quantum field. So yes, quantum fields being necessary beings is more supported than your claim, which is equally as supported that there is a necessary pineapple.
Okay, so firstly, when I was talking about the contingency point, I wasn't talking about the contingency of God's consciousness. I was talking about the contingency of God's omniscience, right? Because you said that God's omniscience would be dependent on his consciousness, or would emerge.
What does this have to do with anything I just said? So all of the properties of God are things which we know are composites. None of the properties of a quantum field are composites.
Look, I'm going to get to that.
You're starting with something that's irrelevant and doesn't in any way address any of my points. Skip to the part that actually matters.
That's why I said that I was just going to get to.
Stop talking about what you're going to get to and just get to the part.
Okay, so now I'll get to it.
Skip.
I'll
go.
get to it. Okay.
Go.
So how the Neoplatonists and how we get to a being that's absolutely simple or divinely simple is by saying that, well, there are things in reality which are ontologically composed, which means that they have parts. Now, those parts could have more parts, and then those parts which have more parts also have parts, and then that could just keep on going infinitely. Then we say, well, this can't go on infinitely because that's a per se causal chain, or it's a per se chain.
I don't care about the causal chain. None of this. Stop. Start with the properties that you think exist in God. Consciousness.
Yeah, I just said that. Okay.
Stop.
The main properties.
Stop. Consciousness can't be necessary. It is a composite.
Okay, wait, so prove that consciousness is an emergent property.
All of the evidence we have is that it's a composite. That's it. You're done.
I didn't ask you to restate the claims that you made earlier on. I'm giving you a burden of proof. I want the proof.
The burden of proof has already been met in the entire field of neurology, psychology, cognitive science, philosophy of mind. Every single field, there is zero evidence.
I'm not asking you to restate your claim. Stop restating your claim.
Your server muted. So there is zero evidence that consciousness can exist as a singularity. That's just made up bullshit that you hold the burden of proof for. You have to prove that consciousness can be outside of space and time. I don't. All of the evidence is already on my side. The burden of proof has already been met that consciousness is not outside of space-time. That burden has been met. You are making a new claim that it actually does exist outside of space-time, that it's a singularity, that is some pure essence bullshit. And none of that has any basis in reality. It's just shit you've made up in your brain. So you hold the burden of proof to actually demonstrate that. Until you can demonstrate that with empirical evidence, it's just you making shit up. So I've already met the burden of proof. I have empirical evidence that consciousness is a material process in all of the fields of science, and there is an abundance of it, and you have no evidence that it is not a necessary being or not a composite. You hold the burden of proof for that.
Okay, so number one, I didn't originally make the claim that consciousness was an emergent property. I was the one that made the claim. You were the one that made the claim. So it just falls.
Okay, so I don't want a reiteration. You just have to go straight to the argument. You're making the claim that your Sky Daddy is conscious, and that's a necessary being, and this consciousness is necessary. You hold the burden of proof for that. Now, I've met my burden of proof that it's not necessary. There's tons of empirical evidence that consciousness is not necessary. So go ahead, meet your burden of proof, show consciousness is necessary. Provide any empirical examples of a non-spatial temporal consciousness. Go.
I'm not asking you to state the evidence.
I'm not interested in your reiterating the argument. You have a burden of proof. Demonstrate consciousness is non-spatial temporal.
Again, I'm not asking you.
I'm not interested in what you have to say about what I said. I don't care. Don't mention me in any of your sentences. Start with consciousness is necessary because.
Nope, because that's not my burden of proof.
Chan,
That
can I
is-
actually?
That literally is your burden of proof. You claim God is conscious. You claim he's a necessary being, so he must be necessary. That's your burden of proof.
I'm gonna hand it back over to you,
I never
Chan.
claimed that he was conscious.
But
You
Chan,
claimed that he wasn't conscious.
Chan,
Where's your evidence for him not being conscious? You can't just shift the burden of proof when you can't give any evidence.
because consciousness is contingent on other things, and thus he wouldn't be a god under your own definition. But Chan, the reason that scientists, biologists, neurologists say that consciousness is an emergent process is because we are pulling in multiple points of sensory data to create a single conscious experience. And thus, that's why we're asking, why would anyone think anything else?
Again, I'm not asking you to restate that you have evidence from neurology or psychology. I'm actually asking you to give an argument, to give proof, to give evidence. You can't just restate your evidence and say that that's the argument. I'm asking you to actually give me a deductive argument or an inductive argument.
We just gave you the evidence. Here's empirical evidence.
No, you didn't give me the evidence.
That's literally what she did. So we've both said these entire academic fields are full of evidence. Like the experiments done on consciousness, there's your evidence. We don't need any more. That sufficiently provides evidence. If you don't understand that, you are stupid. Now, you believe God is conscious, right?
Look, I believe God is conscious, but again, that's not my
wait. So you believe God is conscious, and you believe consciousness is a necessary being, right? Consciousness is necessary,
yes,
right?
I believe that he's a necessary being.
What evidence do you have of that?
I'm still waiting for you to give me the argument of proof that he isn't conscious, because that was your original.
We've already provided that.
that
Consciousness is like a pineapple. It is a contingent thing that is emergent from other processes. All of the scientific evidence indicates that.
I'm not asking you to restate the claim. Proof.
No, we just did. That's the proof. You're done. All of the evidence indicates we're right, you're wrong. That's it. So you have to provide some kind of counter evidence that proves that your position has more support than our position, which means it has to have more support than the entire scientific endeavor of every field. Psychology, philosophy of mind, cognitive science, neurology, all of these fields demonstrate consciousness is an emergent property, which means you have to provide something that's better than all of those fields.
I'm not asking you to state that you have evidence from this field.
I don't want to hear what you want. We have evidence from all these fields. What's your evidence that is better than what we just provided?
Give me a deductive or
No, stop talking. We already provided the evidence. You need to provide something that's better than what we just provided. The entire academic fields, neurology, cognitive science, philosophy of mind, neurology. We just provided a hell of a lot of evidence. You have jack shit. What do you have that's better than what we just presented?
Look, you didn't provide.
What do you have that's better than what we presented? I don't want your opinion. I don't care what you think. You're a moron. We provided evidence. The audience knows we provided evidence. Everyone watching knows we provided evidence. The fact that you don't like it, we don't care. What do you have that is better than the evidence we provided? If you have nothing, say you have nothing.
I'm still waiting for the argument.
What do you have? What do you have that's better than the evidence we provided?
Nobody in the audience.
What do you have that's better than the evidence we provided?
I'm still waiting for the argument.
It's been presented. You're done.
Stating that you had that.
You're done. The evidence was provided to you. Next.
There is a question from the audience, but Amy, was there something you wanted to add there? Because it sounded like you were trying to get a word in at one point.
Well, I got my main point in between. It's just odd because that is where understandably, consciousness is the frontier of science, but so far, all evidence points to an empirical means and an emergent process. And so if we're going to say that it is it is part of a necessary being, it is something that has to exist, and so a universe could come about then there should be some sort of good reason or argument for that.
Okay, great. There is a question from Leo Da Vinci 555. He's wondering if we can explain something. I'll just read the whole thing out and then we can try to address it. I think he's mostly hoping that T-Jump will answer it, because he thinks it's in his wheelhouse. Probably is. He's saying no evidence that disproves a hypothesis. So, if I have a hypothesis and the collected data contradicts my presumption, that wouldn't qualify as data that disproves my hypothesis.
No, evidence could never disprove the hypothesis. So, like, we can say your hypothesis is that the world, the geocentrism, the sun goes around the earth, and we look at all of the data of the solar system that the earth goes around the sun. Does that prove that geocentrism is wrong? No, because we could be in the matrix. We could be in the matrix, and if you wake up, the world could be in the center. So no, the evidence will never disprove geocentrism. It's not how evidence works. It just provides evidence for a different hypothesis.
Okay, the next part of his excellent, thank you. The next part of his last part of his question was because in basic logic, if you have a presumption and under that presumption lies a contradiction, like a conjunction of P and not P, the original presumption becomes negated. So how can data which contradicts my presumption not negate them?
Because it doesn't contradict. As I mentioned before, you could be in the matrix. So having evidence that the heliocentrism is true doesn't contradict geocentrism. It just contradicts it to the apparent level of evidence that we have. And there could just be we're in the matrix, or that we're deluded, or that we're being deceived by magical leprechauns. There's no way to disprove things in science. It doesn't exist.
Fantastic. I think you've probably answered his question very well. Thanks for doing that, T-Jump. We have another person to... let's see, I'm not quite sure who's next. I suspect it's probably Seal Man. I recognize that one there for a while. Welcome, Seal Man. What's on your mind? How are you today? Thank you for joining us.
Hello. So, look, I have a question for T-Jump particularly. So, T-Jump, you hold the view that we can ground like morality independent of God?
Yes, like most academic philosophers.
And the sort of way you'd ground it is you'd say that like you base objective morality or the best of all possible worlds off of like the least involuntary imposition of will.
No, that would just be the definition.
Mm-hmm. So wait, okay, so to be clear, you define the best of all possible worlds as like involuntary impositions of will?
That's the definition of morality. Immorality is an involuntary imposition of will. The grounds of objective morality is just anything like objective morality is defined as a truth claim that is stance independent. So just if there is something that makes moral claims true independent of opinion, it's objective morality. So if a Platonic object exists that is a moral Platonic object, objective morality would be true without God.
Yeah,
if there's a law of physics that makes it true, it would be true without God. If a priori abstracts were existed, that would make morality true without God. If God existed, morality would be subjective, and you would not have objective morality, and so you can't have objective morality with God. So yes, there are lots of ways to ground objective morality without God. The way I define objective morality is based on any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, and so what I think the objective moral standard is the best of all possible worlds, where it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. That's what I think is the perfect moral world.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, why would I grant that involuntary impositions of will are immoral?
Because it follows the evidence of morality. So the evidence of morality we have are patterns in moral intuition, moral progress, and moral dilemmas. That's all of the evidence anybody has in every field, including God, including the Bible, for what morality is. And so we find a pattern in those things. And anything that deviates from those patterns, like a God that drowns millions of babies, that would go against the pattern of morality, or a God that condemns people to hell without their consent, that goes against the pattern of morality. That's a bad theory of morality. A good theory of morality would be a continuation of the pattern, one that says, okay, if this pattern keeps going, where would it lead to? Mine follows the pattern, which is why epistemically you would say it's better than a God hypothesis that breaks the pattern.
Yeah, so why can you please give me a sort of moral dilemma or like any sort of evidence as to why our moral intuitions point towards the fact that like involuntary impositions of will are always immoral?
Sure. So there's an example of doctors. So if there's a doctor in the 1800s and he's trying to save your life, you've been shot in the leg, the doctor in the 1800s will cut your leg off. And he is moral for doing so because that's the best he can do to try to save your life. If a modern doctor in the 2000s was trying to save your life from a gunshot wound and he cut your leg off, you would sue him for malpractice because he is causing excess harm than what he has the means to provide, because he has antibacterials. He can give you a shot of antibacterials and he doesn't need to cut your leg off. So the same action of cutting your leg off when you have more power becomes immoral. So the greater the amount of power you have, the less you are justified to cause gratuitous suffering. So if there is a God with infinite power, the continuation of this pattern would be that he is the least justified to cause any harm to anyone ever. A violation of this pattern would be God drowning millions of babies. That's with infinite power, he is not justified to do that. So that pattern of more power, you are less justified to cause harm, is a violation of the God hypothesis because God violates that pattern a lot.
Yeah, so my question is first of all, the analogy you gave me was if there's a doctor and then they're trying to save your life and they cut your leg off, that's like immoral. But my question is, if you think that any sort of involuntary imposition of will is immoral, you'd also have to grant that he'd be wrong for doing that, right? Whereas most people would also say that the doctor would be perfectly morally justified in cutting your leg off if it was to save your life, even if it did hurt you. So even if he
remember, the involuntary imposition applies if you have infinite power. So if you have infinite power, cutting his leg off would be immoral. Absolutely, 100%, because like the doctor in the 2000s, he cut your leg off. That's immoral. Why is that immoral? Because he has the power to save your life by doing a less harmful means, by giving you an antibacterial. Now, if you're an all-powerful God, giving someone an antibacterial like a shot, if they didn't want the shot, would be immoral because you can do it in a less invasive way. So the proportion of the morality is relative to the power that you have. If you're infinitely powerful, if you do anything that the other person doesn't want, that's immoral. So it applies to God.
So my question is, again, I don't think I grant that specifically, even if you were infinitely powerful, if you do any specific action, then it would be immoral. For example,
without people's consent.
Without people's consent either. So for example, it'd be like an infinitely powerful being decides that they want to feed their child, don't feed their child like food. Their child really doesn't want to eat food, right? But if they didn't have the food, then they die. Even an infinitely powerful being could feed them the food anywhere, even if they didn't want it, right? In a way in which they didn't want. But nobody would say that they are still morally unjustified for saving a child's life, right? Even if they may cause them.
So pause. This is the kid problem. This is a terrible analogy because people just don't understand. Kids would not. It would be immoral to create a child who is intellectually incapable of understanding its own situation. So if a God existed, he would only be able to create conscious agents who had the knowledge and intelligence of adults. So if there is an adult who does not want to eat and the God forces that adult to eat, that's immoral. Yes.
Yeah, wait, why do you think people's intuitions will say to us, like, if there's an adult who doesn't want to eat? Even
no. The point of kids are limited by biology.
Can I finish the example? So
why are you understood your question?
No, I didn't get out. So it's like if there was an adult who like really, really wanted to eat, but for example, didn't understand the means in which he was able to get that food. And then the way you show him how to get the food, he doesn't like it. So he doesn't want to do it. But if he doesn't do it, then he'll die. Even if you're an infinitely powerful being, why would I grant that people's intuition suddenly sway towards the view that you shouldn't feed him the food? Like even regardless of what he wants.
Because that would be assault. Like if there is a human who does not want to eat and you force them to eat, that's literally assault.
Do you not think people would no? Okay, wait. Do you not think people would still say that the action of like saving somebody's life by forcing them to eat, even if they don't want to,
yes, that's immoral. It's immoral. That's horribly immoral.
Yeah, why do you?
Because we already know it is.
Yeah, wait. You said people's moral intuition sway towards that view, but do you have any evidence for that?
Yes, there's tons of it. It's called slavery.
Wait, slavery does not involve forcing people to do things that benefit them, even regardless of if they want it.
It doesn't matter if it benefits them. The benefit part is irrelevant. Forcing people to do things they don't consent to doing is slavery. It doesn't matter whether it's beneficial or unbeneficial is irrelevant. The benefit is irrelevant.
So to be clear, you take the view that like if a mother forces her child to go to school, even
No,
if they
again,
don't want
children
to,
don't count
that's slavery,
because
right?
children
Okay.
are mentally
Mhm.
handicapped. Mentally handicapped people don't have autonomy. They don't have the ability to consent. People who
Wait,
are
they don't
mentally
have the
handicapped and children don't have the ability to consent.
Okay.
Consent,
So if there was an
violations of
adult,
consent apply to adults. So
Okay.
an adult
Mhm.
who doesn't want to eat, if you force them to eat, yes, that's assault, that's immoral.
Yeah. Okay. So if there was an adult, for example, who like there was this set code of life which people had to live by to make society as like useful as possible, right? And
Yeah.
it benefited everyone in society. They really didn't want to learn it, right? However, by them not learning it, they would deeply like what's it called? They would deeply inhibit society's progression. You think
Yes.
that taught it to that person anyway? People would consider that not only slavery,
Yes, that's slavery.
heavily
Yes.
immoral.
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
you also think people would say that's heavily immoral?
Yes. If you are forcing
Yeah,
people to
why
learn
would I grant
things,
that?
if you don't grant it, you don't understand morality. If you're
Wait.
forcing people to do things for society that they don't want to do, that's slavery. Yes.
Okay. So you agree that if there's like if there are prisoners who want to do like who like are being forced to do community service to rehabilitate them, you'd say that's immoral to do, right?
Yes,
Like
in the best of all possible
enslaving them,
worlds,
right?
if we could just like cure their disease, that would be the best
Wait,
option.
okay.
Yes.
And so, to be clear, whenever you said that the sort of justification you have for your view is because it aligns with people's moral intuitions, right? But then my
Moral
question is,
intuitions, moral progress,
Mhm.
and the moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
That's
So
all
my
the evidence of
question is,
morality that
Mhm.
exists.
Yeah. So my question is, why would I grant that people's intuitions go to like sway towards that view? You can't just say, "Oh, what people's intuitions do," without giving any sort of justification for that.
Well, the justification is the patterns of all of the changes of moral intuition and progress and moral dilemmas over time. So, if you want a particular example, like in the case of prison, people would see prison as immoral if there was a less invasive way to solve the problem, which would be like curing them, or like the Norwegian prisons. The Norwegian prisons are more moral than the American prisons. American prisons force people to do manual labor. Norwegian prisons don't. They are
Yeah.
more moral. So
Yeah.
we
Do
can
you
see
think people hold that
the
view?
forcing people to do work is immoral. It is not the most moral thing to do.
Wait, do you think people like okay? Do you think people generally hold the view that if there's like a rapist, for example, who's like raped thousands of people, that if the two options are put him in a Norwegian prison or put him in an American prison, why would people want to like grant that we should like put him in a place where he's more comfortable, in a place
Yeah,
where
their
he
moral
like enjoys?
intuitions agree that yes, it's more
Yeah.
moral to put
Why?
him in the prisons where he's comfortable. They have
Why?
other feelings. They want revenge. That's not a moral intuition. Revenge is not a moral intuition, or wanting to punish someone isn't a moral intuition. That's a different feeling
Wait,
altogether. So the fact that they have different kinds of feelings about the situation and they want to punish or
Wolfe,
revenge or cause suffering to
Mhm.
him as retribution isn't a moral intuition. That's
Wait,
a
okay.
revenge intuition.
Yeah,
So,
what do
but
you
they
say
all
as a moral
agree. They all agree the moral thing to do would be to let him go. Like that's just
Yeah,
like
okay.
universally agreed. The moral thing to do would be
Mhm.
to turn the other cheek, as Jesus
Yeah.
put it.
That's an empirical claim, but it's fine. But look, why would I? What do you take are the necessary and sufficient conditions for something to be a moral intuition?
Um, that is a question for the specific field of ethics and philosophy, but it's
No,
pretty
wait. To be clear,
common.
when you said that revenge, like feelings of revenge, weren't moral intuitions. So
Yeah.
now I'm asking you, what's the sort of trait that is true for one but not true for the other? Where you can say one is a moral intuition and one isn't.
People can understand that their desire for revenge isn't moral. So if they say, "Oh, I have a desire for revenge, but it's immoral," then clearly their moral intuitions are different.
Yeah, they can. Do you not think people can have two conflict like, or they can, after rational reflection, they can say, "Oh yeah, even though I have this like intuition, and I think that would be good to do in this current moment, right? After reflecting on the
No,
sort of
that's
consequences."
something different. If someone says, "I have a desire for revenge," but
Yeah,
clearly it's have a different desire for morality, they're separate
right.
things, then clearly they're
So,
not
no, no,
the
no.
same intuitions.
At the
So,
moment,
like,
the
if you had a desire for revenge and said, "This is the moral thing to do," that would be a moral intuition. That would be your
yeah,
moral
wait,
intuition.
do you
You
not
think it's
think, do you
moral
not
for
think,
revenge.
yeah.
But if you can
Mhm.
identify that you want revenge and you know it's not immoral, then it's not a moral intuition. It's a different thing.
Wait, okay, so to be clear, do you not think that whenever people are making more like decisions, right, their emotions are not also playing a factor into that?
Of course, their emotions are playing a factor into that, but that doesn't have anything to do with
So,
morality.
so to be clear, their more intuitions are actually like info, or they are inclusive of emotions as well, right?
I have no idea what you just said. You're very quiet.
Wait, so their more intuitions are inclusive of emotions as well, right?
Their moral intuitions are a kind of thing, and emotions are another kind of thing. Can they bleed over some? Yes, but that's irrelevant to anything we've just said.
No. Okay. So to be clear, I just take like sort of moral situations typically, or whenever you have moral intuitions to be how people should guide their actions, which would include yourself. So if you have any sort of intuition which may force you or motivate you to act a specific way, right, over any of the other alternative ways, then it would be a moral intuition. So
No,
maybe using
no, that's literally stupid. So
so what do you think people mean when they say something is like a
a
moral
moral intuition is a specific kind of emotion that relates to feelings of morality. That's a specific thing. There are lots of feelings you have. I have feelings of stop talking. There are lots of feelings you have. You have feelings of hunger and anger and disgust and lots of different feelings you have that have nothing to do with morality. There are tons of feelings. Most of them have nothing to do with morality. There is a specific set of moral feelings that you have. Those are the moral intuitions.
Yeah,
there are lots of other feelings you have that have nothing to do with morality. Those are not the moral intuitions.
Okay, so my question is, so you said that we have a whole bunch of like moral feelings. So my question is, what makes something a moral feeling under your view?
If you feel that it has to do with morality, it's a moral feeling. That's it.
It's okay. And when people are saying, "Oh yeah, this thing has something to do with morality," what do you think they mean when they say that?
What?
Okay, if I say this thing, or if I have two different emotions, right? One of them is my emotional drive to go and eat a burger right now. The other one is like my emotional drive to like punish all wrongdoers or all people who do evil, right? What makes one of those a moral intuition, whereas the other one?
The fact that you feel it is immoral. That's it.
What? The fact that you feel it is moral.
Yes. If it is related to your moral feelings, it is a moral feeling. That's it. You could be wrong. You could have very, very specific moral feelings that have no relation to everyone else in society. And that's the thing. That is genuinely a thing. Sociopaths exist, but they don't matter to the trend. So all of the evidence is how do the vast majority of people tend to feel about moral things? That's the bulk of the evidence. So when you've asked the vast majority of people, is it right to torture criminals? They say no, that's immoral. That is the consensus view. So some people disagree, but we don't care. We don't care about the minority of people. The majority of the evidence is the fact that most people believe it is wrong to torture criminals. And the right thing to do is to let them go. That is the moral thing to do, to turn the other cheek. That is the consensus view of the majority of evidence.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for using the word right there for me. So look, whenever you ask the average person, like what's it called, would it be right for me to like stab this guy in the chest for killing my mother? Right? When they say, oh yeah, you would be right or it would be wrong, what do you think that word right or wrong means?
Right. Most of them would say you'd be wrong. That is the consensus of evidence.
That doesn't answer the question. Like, what do you think they mean when they say right or wrong?
I mean lots of different things.
Okay, so when
they're relevant to the topic. Go back to the topic. Moral intuitions, the evidence of moral intuitions is that pretty much everybody agrees torturing revenge is immoral. That is the consensus view. Are there a few who disagree? Yes. Do I care? No.
Wait, okay, because you said most people disagree or agree with this view because, and like, what's the reason why I should grant that? Like, I can also
it's a fact. The fact that they agree or disagree is just a fact. Like you can just look at the moral polls. There are lots of polls of what people think is moral and immoral, and there's just a trend of data. You can just look at the trend of data. It's a fact.
Look, that doesn't answer my question. So look, the question I'm asking, I'm going to specify. The question I'm asking you specifically is, your view is that every single instance of involuntary imposition of will is immoral, right?
Yeah.
And the evidence you're using for that is more intuition and more progress, right? And more dilemmas. And then when I ask you, okay, why do you think most people's moral intuitions or moral progress point towards the fact that every single involuntary imposition of will is immoral? You just tell me it's obvious, but that isn't an answer.
Wait. So the conclusion that every involuntary imposition of will is immoral is the end of the argument. So the trend indicates that society thinks that more involuntary impositions are wrong as we gain more power. So as we gain more power, there are more involuntary impositions that we see as immoral. This trend, if we follow it to its extreme, would be that every involuntary imposition would be immoral. But that's the conclusion. That's not where we are today in society. Today in society, we are not at the point where everyone feels that every imposition is wrong. That's not where we are today. That is the projected conclusion of if this trend continues forever.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to ask you the question. Like the question now is like, why do you think people have intuitions generally that the more power you gain, therefore certain sort of like impositions of will are immoral?
That is the historical trend. That is a proven fact. Women's rights, LGBTQ rights, slavery rights, workers' rights, child rights, animal rights, literally just a fact. It's a fact that that is the case.
Okay, look, I can grant that it's a fact that as like society progresses, then they believe that like sort of imposing on people's will for no reason, right, or due to some like arbitrary distinction, that would be wrong, right? But when you say involuntary impositions of will simpliciter, right, that's the sort of view I wouldn't grant. Like I think most people would grant that
That's
no
again,
matter
that's not the part you need to grant. That part's
yeah,
irrelevant. That's the
to be fair,
conclusion. That's the
to be
part at the
fair,
end of the graph. So wait, do
most
you
people,
understand how a graph works? There is a
yeah, I
trend,
understand
a
how
trend
that.
line. So we have a bunch of data that is the beginning of the trend line, and you say, my hypothesis is that if this trend line continues, there's something very far in the future that will be the conclusion. So
Okay.
if you grant the conclusion, you have to look at the trend line and say, does the trend line point in that direction? So for you to grant that any involuntary imposition of will would be wrong, all you need to do is say, if you look at the trend line of human history, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, workers' rights, animal rights, is the trend that as we gain more and more power, less impositions are justified? Is that the trend?
Okay. So now that you're done with that, like
No, that's the question. This is a question. Do you see that the trend, as we gain power, less impositions are morally justified? Is that? Do you agree that that trend exists?
Yes, simpliciter less.
Okay, wait. So if that trend continues infinitely, what would be the conclusion of the trend?
I think the conclusion of the trend would be like imposing on somebody's will without any sort of justification would be immoral. Like obviously, I don't think that actually implies any sort of mind independent system of like, yeah, this is mind independently immoral. Why can't it just be some shared sort of subjective standard that we all share? Like, why
Okay,
would I
that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant to the hypothesis. So the hypothesis here is that this is the trend. If the trend continues, here is the thing. Now I have another part that I think this is because it's a natural law or something.
Yeah,
but that part you don't that's part you don't have to grant at all. That part's just a part of the hypothesis. You can say there's a different hypothesis if you want. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, so yeah, my question now is after we've gone all of that out of the way, what reason is there to grant that the reason why people have these more intuitions is because of some like objective facts of the world, rather than
Well, I
what
make
does
predictions that the same patterns would exist in all life throughout the universe and in AI. So if there was other life forms, they would follow the same pattern anywhere in the universe. If
Wait.
there's AIs that come about, they will discover the same pattern without having to be told. And if that's the case, that would be a good reason to believe that this is some fundamental pattern in the universe that isn't just constructed by evolution.
Why can't we all just be becoming sensitive to some shared subjective standard that we all seem to hold? Wonder what?
If there's a shared subjective standard between literally every conscious agent in the universe, that would not make sense. If there's because it's subjective. So the fact that all conscious agents subjectively happen onto the exact same belief structure, coincidentally, everywhere in the universe is unexpected. That is weird.
Why?
Because it's subjective. If they come across an idea that's objective, like say mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2, that would be expected because it corresponds to reality. It's objective. If they all come to the same belief in Harry Potter, like if we discovered the book of Harry Potter in every single planet in the universe, every conscious agent all created the same book of Harry Potter, that would be weird. No one's going to predict that. No one's going to be like, well, could it just be the case that it's all just fiction, that they all just happened on it at the same time? That would be weird. What would be expected was if there was like actually existed in some case, and they were using magic to communicate with every other planet, and then it would be like objectively, it makes sense that if Harry Potter is real, that why every single universe has a book of Harry Potter. So if all life everywhere in the universe that is completely separated all discover the same truths, it is more likely that those truths are objective, like math or logic or physics, because there's some fundamental truth in the universe that they're grabbing onto, rather than that it's just a subjective belief that they all happened upon randomly. That would not make sense. That is an incoherent belief to think that every single conscious agent in the universe would happen on the same belief system by chance. Is it possible?
Okay.
Yes. Is it more likely? No.
Okay, so look, the way in which you'd actually establish that this thing is more likely is by giving me some piece of evidence or piece of evidence or piece of data which is accounted for under your hypothesis, but not accounted for under mine, right?
I just
But
did.
it seems to be clear. It seems
I just did that.
Explained. Wait, so it seems as if they're both equally explained. And then the sort of analogy I'll give you is like take sports disputes, wherever people are disputing who's a better footballer, right? It seems as if we can converge onto Messi or Ronaldo being the best footballer without there being an objective stance independent fact of one, how do we determine who's a better footballer? And two, what's it called? Who is the best footballer?
Yes, yes, okay, stop. If aliens from a different planet concluded that Messi or Ronaldo were the best players, having never seen soccer, and their entire planet knows this, and every planet in the universe knows this, having never met them, having never seen soccer, knowing nothing about the rules of soccer, would you guess that was just a subjective belief they happened on, or that there's probably some fundamental thing that ties it all together in the universe? Which would be the better explanation?
Well, that's disanalogous.
No, it's exactly analogous. So this is the claim. Every single society in the universe all comes to the exact same belief system when they have no connections to one another. So suppose it's something arbitrary like who's the best soccer player?
Yep.
Like if every other planet believed that Messi was the best soccer player, having never met him, having never heard of him, having never heard of soccer, what would be the better explanation? That it was just a subjective belief they happened to happen upon, or that there's some objective force in the universe causing all life to have this belief? Which one is the better explanation?
Yeah, so the reason why that's disanalogous first.
No, I don't stop talking about whether it's analogous. Answer the question. If every single planet that had life on it had people that had this belief, Messi is the best soccer player.
Yeah.
They don't know what it even means. They have no idea. They just have this belief in them. Messi is the best soccer player. They don't know what soccer is. They don't know who Messi is. What's the better explanation? That is just a random belief that came about in all planets? Or would you have a better hypothesis that there's something causing that belief to exist in all of them?
So to be clear, I'm unsure if I would even grant that it would be better explained by there being some objective fact that they're coming to sense. You could literally explain that through a variety of reasons. So the way I explain it personally is that
you can explain everything through a variety of reasons. That doesn't matter.
To be clear. So again, the way I'd explain the moral convergence is maybe people are just converging onto a specific sort of fact about what's the way in which is most efficient for people to conduct their lives. However, I don't think people would grant that is identical to what is good or what is bad, right? Because obviously there might be some way which some hypothetical way in which is best for people to conduct their lives, whereas everyone agrees that way is actually completely gratuitously immoral. So again, I think people can actually converge on these sorts of standards without there being any sort of objective fact to the matter. Even even in all of these situations, and it still wouldn't be them becoming sensitive of some moral fact, right? But could be them becoming sensitive of literally any other type of fact. It could be them becoming sensitive to a fact about what's best to live or what's the most practical sort of principles they could apply to their life. Why should
that wouldn't make sense? Again, the reason I'm bringing up all the different planets and all the different kinds of species everywhere in the universe is because they're all going to have different, most efficient ways to live. They're different, unless they're exactly the same. So it would be very unexpected for them all to come to the same moral beliefs if they all have different ways they can live and different, more efficient ways to do things.
I just don't think there'd be convergence.
What?
I don't think there'd be convergence.
Right. That's why it would be unexpected. It would be unexpected under the hypothesis that morality is subjective for all species who have all variety of different ways to live that are more efficient to all come to the same belief. That would be unexpected.
It would be expected under the hypothesis that morality was mind independently true. That everyone's just coming towards.
If it's an objective fact of the universe, it would be expected in the same way that physics is expected. So stop.
I guess we're not going to be able to.
If we understand like that physics is independent of us. It's a thing. Like gravity is a thing that exists independent of us, and they interact with it. Stop talking. Stop talking. Stop talking.
Knowing anything about
Stop talking. So if morality is a law of physics, like gravity, that permeates the universe, then the fact that all of the different species would all come to the same conclusions about morality would be expected, just like the fact that they would all come to the same conclusions about gravity or mathematics is expected, because it's a force that permeates the universe that affects everybody. That if this was the case, it would be expected that morality is objective. That would be expected. If it's subjective, we would not expect them to converge. We would not expect them to have the same things. So yes, the fact that everyone would converge on the same moral feelings would be expected if morality was a law of physics and universal and objective, like I think it is, like physics. That's the hypothesis.
See, oh man, can I ask you, do you believe that morality is objective or subjective?
I'm an anti-realist, but to respond to what T-Jump said, right? Look, it's like I can grant maybe.
So does that mean objective or subjective?
Anti-realism means subjective.
No, okay. You know what?
Yes,
It's fine. Okay, it's fine. Look, I just okay. You know what? It's fine. Look, so to be clear, to respond to what you just said, T-Jump, right? I just don't think. I think like okay, maybe I could grant that under the specific type of convergence that you're talking about, where people are not sensitive of this fact at all. They do not interact. They do not witness any sort of involuntary impositions of will. Yet they suddenly get this epiphany that this thing is wrong, right? Maybe I could even grant that. Okay, it might seem a little bit plausible that would be like that could point towards some objective fact, right? I could still man that. However, that just isn't how we observe convergence occur. So when you tell me that from observing convergence, we come to this sort of conclusion, or it lends credence towards the fact that morality is mind independent, or there's a mind independent moral standard, right? Just like what you're saying, or the sort of evidence you have, right, just isn't there. It doesn't exist, right? You're making sorts of claims about morality, and then the evidence that you're using, and no, the sort of like threshold for evidence you have just doesn't exist. It isn't present. Right.
Yes, so that's we already admitted that. So this is a prediction about something we would find in the future. So you're saying things that I've already admitted. Obviously, this doesn't exist yet, or else I'd be proven correct. This is a hypothesis. If we discovered that all the different species in the universe converged on morality and AIs who don't experience the same kind of stuff, then that would be evidence that I was correct.
Okay. You're using
discovered that yet.
What do you take evidence to be?
What do I take evidence to be? Like anything that increases the probability that the hypothesis is true? What?
Okay. And you do not think that any of and now just to be clear, you think that after looking at more intuition and more progress, they like at least in this world, they increase the probability of
no, that's just the hypothesis. So that is building the hypothesis. The evidence that my hypothesis would be correct would be if we discovered that all the other species converged on the same patterns. That would be evidence my model is correct. My model is just a hypothesis. I see a pattern in the data, and I build a hypothesis off that model. Then I make predictions, and if the predictions are confirmed, that's the evidence my model is correct. So my model does not have that yet. That's a prediction that it might be discovered in the future. Just using the current models of moral intuition, progress, and moral dilemmas is just the data, and I'm making a prediction based off that data. And if my prediction is true, then that would be evidence of my hypothesis.
Yeah, my question is like, okay, if you do not take the view that you have any sort of evidence for moral realism, why you after looking at the data?
I like
why
it.
Does it for you to work? Okay, so the reason why you're a moral realist isn't because there's any evidence, is because you like it.
You seem to have a misunderstanding about how scientists make ideas. Every scientist likes an idea and they accept it, and then they make predictions based off it. Einstein accepted general relativity before he had evidence for it. He just said, I find a pattern, I like the solution, this is it, I think it's true, and then he looked for data. This is how everything in science works. You find a hypothesis you like, you look for data, you accept it way before you find any data.
Okay, so look, I don't think that's how scientists construct a hypothesis.
Literally, no. This is literally just a common fact that it's known.
Another empirical claim that you can't prove.
No, this has been proven. Like Einstein accepted general relativity before he had evidence. He liked it.
Yeah, okay. So he accepted it.
He said it. You could just find quotes of like, I think this is true before he actually did any of the the tests.
Can you like even give me a vague idea of these quotes? Can you tell me what he said?
He thinks it's true.
Okay, do you think he said he thought it was true before there was evidence?
Yes.
Okay.
Literally, this is a very common thing among pretty much every scientist ever. They always think it's true before there's evidence. The Higgs boson, he thought it was true before there was evidence.
Yeah, okay,
like
look,
how do you not know this?
spamming
Like, how do you
empirically.
not know how obvious this is? Higgs boson is a great example. Higgs found a pattern in nature. He predicted a particle, the Higgs boson. He thought it was real. There was no evidence for it for 40 years. He always thought it was real. Most of the scientific community thought it was real before it was ever discovered, before there was any empirical evidence whatsoever, because they liked it. It worked well. It made sense. It fit their models. That's all you need. Like, you take the data, you have an interpretation of that data. There's always going to be an infinitely many alternative interpretations. It's just the problem of underdetermination. And the scientists accept the ones they like the best and work with those to make predictions. And then when the predictions are discovered, they're justified in that belief. But they don't need that. They pick the ones they like and use those to try to make predictions. And that's how you make progress in science. Literally, that's all it is. Pick one you like, try to make predictions.
Okay, now that you're done, so look, maybe you might have just seen different like scientists than me, maybe like in the T-Jumpian view of science.
Now
like,
that
they
he's
think that,
done.
but it's like,
This
look,
is a well-known thing in
our
science.
show.
This is the Feynman
that
thing.
typically-
Everybody knows this. This is extremely
so-
common.
okay, yeah, but everyone knows it, but you can't cite me a single source where it says that.
Yeah, because it's like citing a source for the sky is blue. It's just so common. I don't have any sources. Just everybody
Eyes?
already knows it.
Your eyes? Okay. Look, it's
Yes,
fine.
go ask
So-
a scientist. Go ask a scientist.
Um,
Did you believe your hypothesis before it was?
Uh-huh.
Go ask any string
Yeah.
theorist. Do you
Do
guys
you not
believe in
think
string theory
that-
before it was discovered? Yes. Go ask any, I don't know, multiverse. Any multiverse theorist. Sean Carroll.
Okay.
Do you believe in the multiverse even though it hasn't been discovered? You're like, duh, of course I do. That's why I spend all of my day working on every one of these possible hypotheses in physics, even though they've never been discovered. Hey, WIMPs. Do you believe in WIMPs even though they've never been discovered? Yes. Yes, I do. Do you believe in dark matter even though dark matter has never been discovered? Yes. Yes, I do. This is literally just the base layer of just understanding how humans motivate themselves. If you don't know this, you're dumb. It's like
Okay.
saying the sky is blue, asking for evidence the sky is blue. And I say, use your eyes. You're like, no, that's not evidence. You're an idiot. This is extremely common knowledge.
So now that you got that off your chest, so look, typically whenever people are making hypotheses, it's either A, they have some
Such
direct
snark.
evidence for it, which directly increases the probability, or B, it like is necessary for the best explanations of the like phenomena that they see.
No,
Right.
no,
And wait,
literally
to be
no,
clear,
literally,
to be clear.
literally that isn't science at all. Do WIMPs best explain the data? No. Do new particles best explain the data? No. Are there billions of different types of new particles that can all explain the data in every possible thing in physics? Yes. Does string theory best explain the data? No. Does multiverse theory best explain the data? No. Does it make the most sense to those guys? Yes. Is there a lot of debate about all the different possibilities? Yes. Does any of that matter? No. It's irrelevant. People pick the theory they like the best, that fits the best background knowledge that they feel is most intuitively true to them, and then they try to do work on it, even though it hasn't been proven. This is extremely basic knowledge. Pick any of the modern theories in physics and you just ask them, has this been proven? Like, no. Do you still think it's true? Yes. Because it fits the past data. That's all you need. Look for a pattern in the past data, make a prediction, and make predictions. The exact same thing I'm doing. Look at the pattern in the past data of moral intuitions, moral progress, moral dilemmas, make a prediction. That's it. This is not hard. This is not an interesting topic or an interesting objection to bring up at all.
Okay. So now that you're done with that, that's cool. I guess since you don't have any evidence for
Hey,
your view.
can I just like ask you,
Okay.
Steelman, not to do like the passive aggressive thing?
He called me an idiot, but it's fine. So it's cool. So look, T-Jump, after admitting that you don't have any evidence for your view,
Well, I
and that
admitted that
the
before you
motivation-
came on. Like, that was the
Right,
thing.
and
Like,
the
I literally
motivation-
admitted that years ago. Like, what?
Yeah, and the
How's it
motivation you
again?
have for your view is just that I don't
I
like.
like it.
I
Yes,
like it.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So you also agree that all of the sort of patterns that you see, observe within your within like moral intuition and moral progress, they are all also accounted for under anti-realism, right?
Yes, they're accounted for by infinitely many hypotheses. This is literally the problem of underdetermination. Every single piece of data is always explained by infinitely many hypotheses.
Okay. And do you think that these other hypotheses, like anti-realism, explain them equally as well?
No.
Why?
Because you don't make predictions, or your predictions disagree with mine. Mine have been correct for a while.
Okay. And what sorts of predictions do anti-realists make that have been proven?
You don't make any predictions as far as I know. That's why it's not as good.
We don't need to make predictions around the negative. Like we're just
your hypothesis entails conclusions like that. The fact that we would not expect a convergence of morality of all living things in the universe. Under anti-realism, that would be unexpected.
Yeah,
I think it's expected. I think it's more likely that this is going to be the case. So I think that it is probably wrong. Your model is probably wrong because you have
And what's the argument for it being more likely?
The current trends and patterns that we see in all living creatures.
Wait, so to be clear, the evidence for every single living creature converging towards a specific moral view is because some living creatures converge towards like a specific view, or converge.
All evidence we have of all creatures converges on this thing. So, like elephants, dolphins, chimpanzees, capuchin monkeys.
Yes. Elephants and dolphins converge on involuntary impositions of well-being immoral.
Yes.
Do you have proof of that, or is it just another?
Yes, there's tons of moral studies on lots of different social mammals. Like this is a very common thing. Crows as well, not mammals.
Crows, really?
Yes. Do you have there's tons. Okay, yes. Google the moral studies on other animals. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And to be clear, you think that the moral studies are going to show me that involuntary impositions of will are immoral?
Yes, so like one of those studies was the one by capuchin monkeys where they would give them either grapes or like celery or something, and they would have them do a task together where they both have to do the task, and they would give grapes to only one of the capuchin monkeys, and they'd give like lettuce to the other one, and then the one that got the monkeys would not eat the grapes because it was unfair until there was an equal share of grapes to both sides or something along those lines. Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't prove that they're trending towards involuntary impositions of will.
It literally is. That is a trend because when they are given an abundance of resources, more power, and have the opportunity of fairness, less imposition of will on the monkey that doesn't get the grapes, they
you think they're
voluntarily choose.
If you don't help them. What? You said the opposite in your other debate. You agree that if I'm not doing any action to another agent, then I'm not imposing my will on them, right?
What does this? So my example was there's two capuchin monkeys. They both want grapes. They both want grapes. One is not given grapes. That is an imposition on the monkey. So the experimenter is not giving grapes to the other monkey.
Wait, what do you think an imposition is?
Stopping someone from doing something they want.
Wait, how am I stopping someone from doing something they want if I don't willingly?
Like if I don't give one grapes, that's unfair. Yes.
Okay, wait. So you agree that if I stop,
how is this even a conversation? Yes, the experimenter is imposing on the will of the monkey who wants the grapes by not giving them grapes. If the monkey did work expecting grapes and you don't pay it with grapes, yes, that's an imposition on the monkey's will. Yes.
Agree. Okay, to be clear, you also agree now that like stopping rape would be immoral under your view because you're stopping someone.
If you were infinitely powerful, if you're infinitely powerful, you just stop it from being able to happen.
No. So to be clear, they want it to be able to happen, right? You are stopping them from like being able to.
It's not an imposition on will. You wanting something from someone else is not your will. So will only applies to yourself and your property. So if you want something to happen to someone else that isn't your will being imposed upon.
No. Okay, and to be clear, you want something, and to be in the example you gave me, you want something from someone else in the sense that they want food from somebody or they want someone else to feed them, right? So you agree that wouldn't be an imposition of like.
Yes, it literally is an imposition because the experimenters made the pattern that if you do this work, you will get grapes. That's a payment. That's a contract. If you do
It's
this work,
consensual.
you will get grapes. And that was a consensual agreed upon contract by the chimpanzees. And if the other person doesn't hold up the end of their contract, though it's a violation of the imposition of the monkey because they agreed to the contract. Yes, this is an imposition. This is not even hard. This is like basic stuff.
To be clear, like, so you
next.
We've got Alien.
Those were some big circles. Yes. Hello, Alien. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, how you doing?
Great. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I just got a question. I'm very interested to hear the perspective of people who are, I would assume you guys are atheists?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is you guys' perspective, opinion on psychic abilities?
That is incidental to being an atheist. An atheist just doesn't believe in any deities, gods or goddesses. The psychic stuff, I know some atheists who believe that psychic stuff is real, like mind reading, telekinesis, stuff like that. Most atheists I know don't believe that stuff. That would probably be more in the realm of skepticism that addresses the counters to those kinds of things. However, you're in luck because most atheists seem to be skeptics or trying to be proper skeptics.
Yeah, there's no psychic phenomenon. They don't exist. It's all fake. It's all imagination.
I once thought that I could control the TV with my mind on Tuesdays, but it turned out I was wrong.
Oh, those must have been fun experiments.
All right. So why is it that you guys think in that way? Well,
because every time it's been tested, it has failed. There has been an abundance of tests on parapsychology and parapsychic abilities, and they've all failed abundantly. There is, like, they succeed at the same rate as random chance or worse. So if you're just guessing random numbers, you get them right sometimes. And the same thing happens with parapsychology. You have a desire, and sometimes that desire matches where the wind blows and it happens. But the rate that it occurs is equal to the rate of people random guessing. Therefore, there's no reason to believe the parapsychology is real and not just people making stuff up.
And what are those studies from?
Well, there's a bunch done by the government. The U.S. did an entire branch of the government based on doing parapsychology research to try and monitor the Russians. All failed. There was a bunch of research done by James Randi and other parapsychology research. James Randi offered a $1 million prize to anybody who could demonstrate parapsychic abilities. All failed. There's been a number of studies. There's a Journal of Parapsychology where they try to demonstrate these things. All failed. There was a bunch of studies done by a guy who wrote a book, a Christian guy who wrote a book about near-death experiences, about people seeing red shoes in other buildings and serial numbers on top of medical equipment. He found every single example he could in a 500-page document. All of the best examples went through in a scientific setting and were discovered to be false. So every single area where these have been tested, they've all been proven false. And there's been an abundance of testing by the government, by independent agencies, by people who believe in parapsychology, and they all fail.
Now, it hasn't helped that there have been some plumbers who've gone on and done TV shows where they search for ghosts in people's houses. It turns out that they know full well why those noises occur, and they're just capitalizing on it.
Alien, I can give you an example with a ridiculous amount of documentation. So CIA Reading Room has, or type in Project Stargate, it has all the documents from Project Stargate, or that's what it is on there, right? I think it's Project Stargate on there. Anyways, just read through that, right? You will understand it's pretty much nonsense. All the internal memos were like, hey, we got to cancel this. This is a waste of money. The accuracy is almost indistinguishable from chance, right? Stuff like that.
In the Stargate, the CIA project that's been done, correct? I've read a little bit about that. That's why I wanted to ask the question.
When people ask me about it, I reference Project Stargate as good evidence against it, right? Because there's a lot of information in there about it, and all the government memos where the government is spending money on ridiculous amounts of money on weapons over the years, they don't see this as a weapon or usable for anything like that.
Well, in some of the things in some of the accounts, and when it came to Project Stargate, from what I've read and such, it seems to be that there was even certain times where a lot of the times they got it right, and a lot of times they didn't get it right.
Would that be like 50-50?
So I would actually say look at the internal memos of Project Stargate and actually read through there. You obviously haven't read through there. You probably read some. I don't even know what you read in there, right? I never read anything like that.
Well, there was one example where one of the psychic person was able to make a prediction about Saturn having rings before they had any photographic evidence of Saturn's having rings, which I know in itself is not a credible amount, but that's one of the things that I've read. So, if let's say
more Project Stargate.
Okay, so
I think you will be very convinced in the opposite direction if you read through the rest of Project Stargate documents on there.
Okay, so what will be what in you guys' opinion? What would be the best way for you to believe in psychic abilities? Let's say in a hypothetical situation, what would you need for you to believe in that?
Sufficient evidence that it actually works, basically.
What kind of evidence?
Well, if somebody claims to have telekinesis, we want to be able to take them to an environment that they're not familiar with and have them perform on an object that is outside of their physical reach and be able to demonstrate that they can make this stuff happen and make it work.
Yeah, if someone claimed such an ability, it would be very easy for them to demonstrate to all of us.
I think the telekinesis in itself, manipulating the physical reality, we can all agree that it is far-fetched. But let's say, how about the most simplest one, which is the most famous one, will be mind reading.
Mind reading? Sorry, people migrate. That's a fact. That's not. There's nothing psychic or special about that.
Mind reading, Richard.
Mind reading.
One of those
mind reading. I'm sorry, mind reading.
No, mind reading, not migrating. No.
So mind reading.
Mental telepathy. Yeah.
So these people are generally people that are like experts in deception and perception, right? And so they're like looking at physical cues that's going on. They're they know the right questions to ask to have you guide them into what you want. From my understanding, it's just maybe not all psychics are like that, right? But
there is a combination.
It's all nonsense.
There's a combination of something called cold reading and asking leading questions and all kinds of things like that. To test that properly, you could have somebody in the next room, and the psychic mind reader could not know who they are or anything about them. And it'd be handled in a double-blind procedure so that the people are telling, okay, they're in the next room on the other side of that wall. There's only one person in the room, the same size as this room. Tell us what number they're thinking of in their head. It's going to be somewhere between 1 and 1,000 if they consistently get that right with multiple instances. And the person looking at a piece of paper is thinking about that number on that piece of paper. And make it real easy. You know, these people, I can guarantee you, are not going to get that right unless they're making lucky guesses. That's it. They're not going to be able to reproduce it reliably.
In fact, if I could piggyback off what they were, both Randolph and Taco were saying, cold reading really is just trying to pick up cues and trying to say that, well, they look this old. I bet this amount of relatives have died. I bet if I take a guess over here, there's a 50% chance that I'm going to be right. And then there's actually hot reading, where they actually have sometimes had audiences take surveys, and then they hand these surveys to the producer, and then the producer shuffles through them, and then through equipment, they're being fed information about very specific audience members to make it seem like they can read minds. And so there are ways you can make double-blind studies in order to eliminate this. And if someone would love to come forward and truly show that they can read minds, we would love to know about it.
James Randi even had, I think, some people come up and try to challenge this and failed. But yeah, when you're talking about equipment, an example of the equipment would be a small receiver in their ear that is somebody else is talking into a microphone and it's reproduced in their ear that the audience has no idea it's in the presenter's ear, and stuff like that.
Good. Let's say, for example, you were to sit with a medium, which that will be a mind reader. If they were able to consistently point out very specific things, even things that are unknown, things that you only share with close people, things that are a little bit unusual for this person to know, in a consistent manner, would you say that this in itself would be good enough for you to maybe shift your perspective on it?
No, because I'd have to sit with them, and they would be able to look at me and read me in different ways, not just purely my mind. They would have to be in a separate room. It'd have to be double blind. They'd have to not know who I am. I wouldn't need to know who they are either. It wouldn't matter. And they'd have to be able to say, this is what's in my mind, or this is something I generally think about, and that's not something that most humans generally think about, that sort of thing.
Good thing. So I can understand that in that level. How about in both settings? Let's say, for example, you were to sit in front of this person, they were to make the same thing, the same technique. But when I'm talking about specific things, I'm not talking about just saying, "Oh, you
no, hang on. So the problem here is that we need to sit with them, and we need to interact with them. If they're going to prove that they can read minds, then they need to be able to do that without actually sitting with the subject. They need to be able to read minds, period, without any other kind of interaction. We want to be able to isolate these things and be able to demonstrate consistently, repeatedly, that it works. And not just with one person. We want them to do this with multiple people again and again and again, because there's always that possibility that maybe they figured out who one of the people is. Hopefully they don't figure out who the others are. We need to see consistently that they can do this again and again and again and do it with ease, or do it with whatever conditions they say they need. Like if they need to drink a glass of warm water at a specific temperature before they can read the mind, fine, give them that. But again, it has nothing to do with the person whose mind is being read.
A higher rate than chance. Has to be a higher rate than chance.
And what kind
Absolutely.
And what kind of guesses does it have to be completely acceptable for you? Like we can see.
If they're reading a mind, it's not guessing. They're actually reading the mind.
I'm using the wrong wording here.
Okay. Attempts.
Excuse me. I haven't slept in a while.
Call it an attempt. Call it an attempt.
An attempt, yeah. So let's say, for example, like motherfucker, my mind is not working. So does it have to be very specific, including time, dates, and how the events happen, such things like that? For you,
I don't know. They can just. I can be holding if I'm the subject in the other room, I could be holding a piece of paper has the number 42 on it, and they're told to tell me what number I'm thinking of between 1 and 1,000, and my job is to sit there and focus on that number and think about that number over and over again. And this should make it easier for them to read my mind if I'm really concentrating on this number. It's mostly what's in my head. So I would expect that for them, however long, if they say it only takes 10 seconds to read a person's mind, okay, after 10 seconds, they better have that number 42. If they are not sure, or they're guessing a number or coming up with some kind of excuse or something, then they failed.
I would say that it depends. The experiment, the level of specificity of the experiment would change how likely it is to happen by chance. So the more specific it is, the less times you have to do it, because the more specific it is, the less likely it is to happen by chance. But you're still going to have to do it like 10 times in a row and get it right more times than you get it wrong.
Reproducibility, indeed. Yeah.
Reproducibility. So if I'm understanding this correctly, if let's say if he were to cite and read what's deep within you, 10 specific events well detailed said, it would not work if I'm hearing this correctly?
That'd be great. That'd be great evidence. So, like, yeah, if you could read my mind 10 times in a row about whatever I was thinking about, that would be great evidence.
And another interesting twist that could be done on such a test is they could take one of the previous subjects and put them back in the room and see if the reading is the same.
Okay. Does it have to be like spontaneously what's in your mind, or could it be simply mentioning things that has happened within your past that nobody knows?
That depends on what the psychic's claiming their ability is.
So the past things would not work for a number of reasons. One is going to be that if you just like look up my history, my social media data, you could find a bunch of very specific events about my past that happened and recite them just because you looked up my past. Or you could find people I know or met me and they could tell you events about my life and you could record them that way. So it has to be something novel, something we wouldn't be able to expect under just normal circumstances. So like you could predict, I could predict probably about 1,000 things that happened in your life because they happen in everybody's life and be right about it. So one of the things is like the people will say they'll like speak to dead loved ones. Like, I'm getting an R. Anybody in the room have a relative with a dead relative with an R? And they can just make these broad generalizations about humans in general.
That's called
and
cold
they
reading.
seem very specific. Yes, cold reading. And they seem very specific and very correct. And you can guess lots of things that happen to people's lives by doing cold reading because you use generic kinds of labels that apply to lots of people and then get them more specific over time by using other kinds of generic labels, and that makes it seem like you're doing something specific when you're not. As Randall mentioned, this is called cold reading. It's very obvious, and so no, it can't be just like past events that happened to me.
Now that's with interaction. Now, if it's a double blind scenario, like I described earlier, where there's a wall between you and your subject. Let's say you're the psychic and your subject's on the other side of that wall. You don't know who they are. You know nothing about them, and you're claiming that you're able to talk about what happened to them 5 years ago. Then you should be able to do that, and that may be considered reasonable. I would think in that circumstance. I think what Tom Jump's thinking about, you've got a whole audience there. And
even in that case, Randolph, because like that person could have talked to somebody who knew you, and so they know facts about your past that you just wouldn't.
Then it's not double blind. Yeah.
Well, that's why double blind studies. You don't know if it's double blind if you're asking someone if they know something about your life, because they might know something about your life, or they might be able to guess generalities. Like I can guess you were probably married in the let's say about 30 years ago. You had a wedding, and it was she had a white dress. Her family.
But that's interaction. There's an interaction there. Yeah, the test that I was suggesting is that the psychic can basically read this person who's on the other wall without interacting with them and be able to say this and this and this about them. Then you bring another person, they're going to have different things. These are very specific things. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Well, the problem is there's generic things that happen to most people that you could still be right about. So even in that case, it can't be generic in that case because it would not. You have a high random chance of getting the generic things correct.
Yeah, like if you say, "Oh, this person was breathing 5 years ago," that would be extremely generic. But yeah, you want something that's definitely specific, and I guess novel is the word you used as well. So there'd have to be some parameters outlined ahead of time.
There was one where they gave pictures to one of the psychics and said, "Tell me about the lives of the people in these pictures," and they gave him pictures of like famous poets, and then they gave him a childhood picture of the interviewer, and they said that this person had been dead for 50 years. Like, no, it's me. That was me. That was funny. That was a good one.
Yeah. So the easier one is just predicting a number that's current. Tom Jump is definitely right. Like, guessing the past is harder because, or making statements about the past because there are general things that can be found. But if it's something specific now in the current point of time, like what number are you focused on? What are you thinking about? And this can all be documented. This is a lot easier test to do. So it depends on what the abilities of the psychic are. Like some psychics self-proclaimed psychics will claim pretty vague things about their abilities, and then they say, well, that's out of my purview when they're guessing it wrong, and when they guess it right, they say, yes, that's a demonstration of my ability. So there's sneaky stuff like that going on too. Like a lot of them are charlatans, and that's why a lot of this stuff happens.
I would say the fundamental misunderstanding that could have caused a person to believe they're a psychic genuinely and just to be confused about it.
Right. Similar That's why I say a lot. I don't say all. There are some who genuinely believe.
No, I'm sure there are many who are bogus, but I'm saying the basic misunderstanding is called the clustering illusion. And there's a variety of different family or sort of subspecies of the clustering illusion. But the basic idea is that if you were to just look at a small slice of any random distribution, you could find any kind of pattern in that little slice, like all ones, all zeros, a 1 and a 0 and a 1 and a 0 and a on and off repetitive pattern, etc. And so you get an impression that there is a pattern based on that little slice. But if you zoom out and you look at all the data, there's parts of it that look every which way, and there isn't an overall pattern. That's a more clear picture of what's actually going on. And
There's
so
an
people,
interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I talk to people about astrology or any one of these things that they in their own, their own life, they've concluded are evidence of some kind of like supernatural pattern or like mystical belief about probability or miracles or whatever, I ask them if they understand what clustering illusions are. 9 times out of 10, they don't. I explain basic statistics to them, and if they actually get it, they're almost always forced to admit that it could be a clustering illusion. And their takeaway is, I just don't want to believe that it's an illusion because it means something to me. And it's like a profoundly relieving feeling when you like expect something bad's going to happen, and then it seems like a miracle when it doesn't. And you feel grateful, you feel happy, you feel relieved in a profound way. So the attribution of that to some kind of meaningful, significant purpose or plan or reason, whatever it might be, is a very natural thing to conclude. But if you look at all the situations in your life, not just the one that you noticed because it was very important to you at the time, there's just about the same odds as everybody else of having any given thing happen to any particular person. And there isn't any rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, there's also an interesting scenario happened. Psychosomatic effects are a big thing in all of this too. There's a martial art called Ki, where people taking it actually believe that they're using some kind of telekinetic force to knock down their opponents. And they'll have all these people in the Ki class lined up ready to attack them, and then they'll wave their hands in a certain way, getting the technique right, apparently, and then all those people end up falling over. And all those people participating in the class believe they're actually getting knocked over by this because this expectation's been laid in so thickly, and the people practicing, a lot of them actually genuinely believe it. Now, they brought a Ki master, a high degree, he'd been practicing for decades and decades, and he was up against a martial artist. I think he was doing kung fu, and that martial artist is this technique, the telekinetic technique, obviously didn't work, and that Ki martial artist got knocked out. First hit, it's just like the kung fu guy, and then the kung fu guy's coming down really worried about it, along with all the medical staff looking at this poor guy on the ground. So his martial art worked just fine in his circles with the other people who believed it, but as soon as he's outside of that circle, it doesn't work anymore. And this is the big complaint a lot of these parapsychology people have, is that, oh well, these skeptics, they're just not having faith, they're just not believing, they've got the bad attitude or the wrong attitude, that's why it's failing, because they're poisoning the well, etc., stuff like that. That's really not the case. The reality is consistent. Reality doesn't lie to us. You can't trick it. It's just the way it is.
And it's pretty interesting.
I think Ki is spelled Kiai, in case you're interested in looking that up.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, Kiai. So it's Kilo Igloo Alpha Igloo.
All right, bad. One more thing. In itself, have you guys have any personal experience when you have visited people who do readings, tarot readings, astrology readings, or anything like that?
Well, I kind of felt pretty like it's all pretty cringy. If I asked them how it worked when I was a kid, they just didn't have answers for me that were satisfactory. I know somebody who had an experience with somebody who could train to do all that kind of stuff. I knew them many years ago, and it turned out they got raped by the person. So, I don't really hold the community that's pushing those ideas in very high regard, because it seems very scammy to me. And who knows what the alternative motives are of some of those scammers. Most of the time, they're just trying to drain people of their money.
Yeah, I've done lots of tarot card readings and stuff. It's the same thing as cold reading. They're just super generic. Astrology and tarot cards have generic labels that they apply to people that apply to most people. So like if you switch the like description of what a Libra is versus what a Virgo is, both people will agree that they are both of those things if you just switch the description and the label. They did that in one of the astrology tests where they just took all the different labels of different people of different astrologies and just switched the names of the month or whatever, the title, and then everyone still agreed that they fit those things even if they were the completely wrong set of properties that are supposed to be ascribed.
That's been reproduced many times in many different ways with many variations on the experiment consistently.
Now, Alien, if you want to have some fun with this stuff, you can go to a party, bring a horoscope with you, cut off the months, and just have the descriptions themselves. You need to have a way of matching them up later, of course, but you can then pass them out to people and say, here's the list of the randomly sorted horoscope descriptions. Tell me, which one do you think most suits you? And then get them to write their birth date on the back, and then correlate it later and tell them how many are right and how many weren't. Make sure it's not a famous or well-known horoscope. The results, I think, will be quite interesting because a lot of them will be wrong.
No, I've done similar things like this. I've never done tarot reading, but I've done readings before.
What results did you get with doing a horoscope like one?
No, I don't do a horoscope. I don't know anything about astrology or numerology.
Well, the horoscope, they just have, typically in the newspapers, you'll see where they have horoscopes published. They'll have 12 different descriptions of people, and they put one under each of the 12 portioned parts of the horoscope. They don't fall right on the end of the month. There's a kind of weird date overlap, but each one's distinct. So if your birth date falls in this range, then this is the one that applies to you, like Pisces would apply to me for February 25th. And when I look at those descriptions, I'm thinking, I kind of like that one more than what Pisces gave me. And this one kind of seems to be a better fit. And I've looked at it that way. And then it was my wife who told me about this years ago. Somebody did that at a party, and it's like, wow, that's interesting. And the results were all over the place. People were just completely wrong. Most of them were completely wrong about what they were, to the point where it looked like the ones that were correct were more like correlating with what you'd expect from lucky guesses.
So for me personally, so I've personally went to tarot readings and mediums and such things like that, and there were some pretty interesting things that I've personally experienced. I do understand the skepticism part, however,
of money,
because even I, as a personal, I'm personally interested in the occult. There is a lot of these reasonable skepticism that happen because there is a lot of sham psychics that do happen. One of my experiences when multiple people who do astrologies and tarot readings, they come and they say, well, this will happen and this will happen. I've been told, I did a quick free one real quick. Somebody that was really interested, that I was referred, he said that in this date in specific, I should go out and have fun. But in itself, I don't really know what he means by that. They tend to not really give out any really form of intention or think, well, yeah, but that's the thing, karaoke.
They tend to be very
myself.
It's very vague.
Yeah, that way they can satisfy more customers. It's a business decision, the way I look at it.
There was things, however, where I would notice some repetition, where they would say some specific things, like this will happen at this age and this will happen at that age. But unfortunately, I do not really remember. I go check out those tarot readings, and I do keep them on notes. And I've been told there's some interesting things, or some the things that are not that are pretty interesting. The ones that are really interesting is when it's done online, because you're not really in front of the person, you're just hearing the voice and such. So this is what I'm trying to get at, is see how accurate it could get. When it comes for me personally, I've done readings, but I didn't do any official readings. I've done more practice just to see how it is and how is that.
It's like scams, but virtual.
Few interesting things that came out when I've done it, when I've practiced. But there was some things I do definitely agree that it's a majority is psychoanalysis and cold reading that I've noticed myself, like, yeah, no, this will not be sufficient enough for it to be considered a psychic reading.
Good for you. You mentioned you used the term reasonable skeptic before. Or reasonable skepticism. And I just point out that skepticism isn't about being reasonable. It's about accuracy and figuring out what you're trying to determine what is accurate and what's not accurate. That's it. It's impartial.
Okay, gotcha. So, if let's say, for example, I were to continue doing this study, doing this research, and doing all this stuff, what are the things that you guys would like to see, like to hear, and would like to be done? Because I'm genuine about it. I got a lot of fucking free time for this shit, and I just like exploring.
Winning lottery numbers.
Winning lottery numbers? That is something that have been interesting because a lot of people have been talking about how billionaires use astrology, even though that's a fake quote.
Well, they definitely do, but they're not billionaires because they use astrology.
Mm.
They use astrology
because they sell astrology. That's why
well.
they're rich. Yeah.
If you want to do like meaningful experiments and not just waste your time fooling yourself, then you need to study statistics and you need to study experiment design and research methodology, which is designed to control for error. In many, many, many cases, there are apparently novel results or surprising results, which turn out to be a very embarrassing research methodology mistake where the researchers have to retract the paper. These are researchers who are trained in their field, who are often well-meaning and have, in many cases, millions of dollars of funding, and they still screw up and give themselves false positives all the time because they fail to control in some important way. And then someone else has to point out their mistake after everyone takes a good look at it, which is why we have peer review. This is why we have things like reproducibility as a very highly prized test before we take seriously any majorly shocking result, as we do peer review where someone else examines the research, and then reproducibility where someone else has to be able to do the same experiment, assuming that they follow all these same instructions, that there's not some flaw in the way that the study was set up that doesn't reproduce when other people try to do it. So study science. You can do amazing, citizen science if you actually research it, much the same way that you can do your own legal research, you can do your own medical research. And in many cases, you can discover things that your doctor missed or that your lawyer, failed to pay attention to. So citizen science is a thing, but you have to really study the methodology of whatever kind of experiment you're doing and look at all the mistakes that other people making similar mistakes in the same field have previously made before you start your own experiments.
Okay, so
I would suggest two things. One is Richard Dawkins' documentary, the TV show, The Enemies of Reason. I don't like reading. Documentaries work better. So the documentaries on parapsychology from the skeptic perspective are really good. And then you can also look into the only journal of parapsychology. There's an actual academic peer-reviewed journal of parapsychology where you can find examples of people who think it works and what they think the best examples are, and compare those to like the documentaries on the skeptics to see which you think is the better explanation of the data.
Okay, interesting. IX, just real quick, you said study statistics and then
research methodology and the ways that people make mistakes and have to retract things, right? So in a field like
particularly scientific method research methodology.
Yeah, but it differs for every domain and every discipline and every type of experiment. So in the case of parapsychology, there's certain things that they try to do, control for it and so on. But you generally don't want to just start with people who already have like a built-in confirmation bias from the get-go. Those people are not going to be able to do objective research if they go into it trying to prove the truth is out there, kind of X-Files style, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at all of the studies that get retracted and all the mistakes that have been made, it'll give you a little bit of epistemic humility into how hard it is to get this stuff right. And it'll give you a healthy skepticism. When people say, oh, look at this amazing thing, this person has this story where they knew a thing and they told us something and then it happened. And then you look at all of the attempts to do anything like that with any consistency, with any reproducibility, failing, all the reasons why the apparent positives were tainted because of like data contamination or like selection bias or all sorts of things like that. And you realize, oh wow, most of the
Sure,
people who think
Master,
they have
Master.
positive results are just fucking up without realizing it.
And what's up, y'all? What's up,
Mhm.
Master
Okay.
Logan, KCA?
And they're
Yeah,
honest,
but-
well-meaning people. They just don't realize what their mistakes are because it's very hard to control for the mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a people problem, and peer review does make up for most of that, if not all.
Are you guys? Yeah.
Oh, Alien, I just wanted to. I had someone saying that. Are you aware there is actually $1 million reward for anyone that can demonstrate psychic abilities under laboratory conditions?
I mean, James Randi's challenge.
Who said that?
James Randi.
This is the third time now that we've had James Randi's name come up here. Maybe fourth.
He's
pretty good. He's doing
He
amazing.
is a rock star.
Amy's talking to you.
James Randi. Who is James Randi?
So his last name is spelled Randi, and he's originally a magician who was dissatisfied with seeing scam artists fooling scientific researchers on paranormal abilities, like psychic abilities and things like telekinesis. So he joined up with the scientists to help them improve their research methods so that they aren't fooled by these things, by telling them how these tricks are done and how these illusions are performed. And then after that, they were able to get the consistent results.
He's also a terrific magician. I've actually done a magic trick with him in person. It was pretty fun.
In person? Wow, that's an honor.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool. Well, he's dead. That's unfortunate.
He's passed away, yeah.
Is it still up for offer?
I think the organization is still there. So if somebody wants to, but what's going to happen for that is there's a bunch of conditions that you have to agree to before you can do that. So they have it all laid out contractually beforehand. It's not like Deepak Chopra's counter to that, where he'll give $1 million reward to atheists who can prove atheism or whatever, and he doesn't get into all these, and it's up to him to decide. He never gives it out. But James Randi's on the up and up. They did everything formally and properly with the right legal things set up. So there's a number of people who just refuse to go on James Randi's show because they did not like those conditions. But the conditions are all very well justified under science and all these different things that need to be done properly to make sure that this is actually what you're testing for.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. No, I mean, I've heard about it, but I just ignore it because back then I was an atheist. But now that you brought it up, I mean, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, I am aware of this $1 million.
Now you'll probably find in the community, the paranormal communities, and all these psychics and whatnot, that some of them get into healing, faith healing, and things like that.
Those things, yeah.
Yeah. So for that, to get educated on that area, I highly recommend quackwatch.org. Quack like a duck. Quackwatch.org. They cite their research. It's done very well, and they debunk all this nonsense. And they do it thoroughly, and they do it with excellence.
Quackwatch.org.
Yeah, it's a website. It's done by a bunch of PhDs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if I have a story, if you guys are willing to listen, about this one experiment that I've done. And I would like to hear criticism about it.
Yeah, cool if you need just 5 minutes for it, sure, go for it.
5 minutes, no problem. Okay, so there was a time where I've done an experiment with a person who was as well interested in the same thing as me, but as well more scientifically into it as well. So it was, for me, the perfect system empowerment to have. Somebody was grounded in tune with reality and honest. This is, mind you, done over the internet. So this one as well was pretty much more interesting as well, since we weren't there face to face as such. So a lot of the times what we would do is that she was more well versed into these things. So the first thing that we have done is attempting to guess what we're thinking within our mind, of what we're trying to touch, which body parts we're thinking about between us and such things like that. So there's been multiple times where we have guessed it right, but there's been, of course, many times where you have gotten it wrong. What's pretty interesting, however, is that amount of times that we have gone right, it's like, okay, that's pretty interesting, but it can be, again, like random chances. Like, again, like I said, the amount of times that we have gotten wrong. Then the more we did it, the more things has gotten pretty interesting. Then there was this. Then there was the remote.
Sorry to interject, but I mean, by more interesting, as you did more and more of it, do you mean that your accuracy was going up? Because that
the accuracy was going up. Yes.
So that's indicating familiarity, perhaps, and that's why you need to change subjects and have the double blind thing going. But carry on.
Yeah, the accuracy was getting more and more accurate, which is the interesting part. Then second, and there was the whole remote viewing thing, which is interesting because I just spontaneously thought about it. I never heard about it. I didn't know about it at all. I just say, hey, because in occult literature, energy exists. Energy is this, spirit that. If I were to be remote viewing, then you should feel it to some certain extent. Is what we've talked and what we've theorized about, based on occult literature. I asked her to tell me where I was in her bedroom, and she guessed it once, and she guessed it wrong multiple times. So, in itself is say, well, we're going to simply conclude this is simply lack of training. Or it could be simply that there's been a coincidence. That has been pretty interesting, however, to see that there's been more like of these accurate predictors going on. But then again, we can also make the argument that because we have gotten to know each other, we have gotten to know certain patterns or behaviors, but at the same time, we weren't there face to face. And a lot of the times it hasn't been done with webcam. We've been doing it on audio.
Do you know what competitive rock, paper, scissors is?
No, but just real quick. And then the third one is, this one was a pretty interesting one in itself. This is a thing where I don't know what the word for the title is, but this is how can I explain it? I mean, I think it's pretty cool. And this one was pretty interesting, and this one was the most accurate out of all of the experiments. We would sit down, and we will both go into a meditate and go into a state of flow. And there's the things that we can do within our conscious mind is just create a form of room, a temple, and this is what's according to her. So basically, I just imagine quickly, just a room and such things like that. And then I would see her enter it, and I would see her do all of these actions and such. I would then repeat, and I would tell her exactly all of the movement, word by word. She confirmed everything to be exactly accurate, 100%. And this is one of the things that just caught me a little bit off guard. That's basically it. So I'm not saying whether I believe it or not. I just found it to be the last one to be the most interesting because it was the most accurate one and kind of like new to me. So, new to me. So I just definitely would like to hear what you guys have to say.
People play rock,
that.
paper, scissors competitively using exactly what was described, which is once they see how a person behaves, they start to build up like a predictive model in their brain where they can intuitively predict the likelihood of the other person doing rock, paper, or scissors with like a greater than average success rate because they've observed how the person behaves. They also have assumptions based on how most people behave. And so a competitive rock, paper, scissors player who does it a lot can beat people at rock, paper, scissors more than the average amount of the time. The bottom line is that's what the brain does. It detects patterns, even ones that are not there, that it imagines. And so it tries to predict things slightly better than you would expect it to be able to predict on average if it were totally random. The brain is very good at that. It is not a psychic phenomena. It's literally just what neural networks do. If you repeatedly have some set of stimuli in a time series and you expose neurons to them, the neurons eventually become predictive of the time series stimuli and then are able to predict it before it happens in a way which allows them to recognize and even expect it before it occurs. That's what your brain does. It's not psychic phenomena.
Is this due to the fact that the eyes was? Is it due to the fact that the person was able to observe the person in
any form?
Face
If you observe something,
okay.
If there is a system behind it that has some mechanism to it, your brain can construct a prediction of whatever the next thing it will do is, even if it doesn't know anything about what's causing it. Your brain is detecting the pattern without knowledge of the causal structure of the pattern. So you don't need to like know how something works to predict it mentally. You just need to observe its behavior for any period of time.
And you don't need to hear or see the person at all. So it's like poker online. If you're playing someone who's playing poker, you can get a pattern of what they do based off of how much they bet or when they bet or how long they take to bet. Even if you don't look at them, you never speak to them, you can still gauge their patterns based off of just how often you see their patterns.
And the mathematical concept behind this is called machine learning. It's just a statistical method where you take a given data set and you form an approximate curve fit to the data, which is like the closest you can guess to what it will be in the future. And you can do this with literally any type of data. You can do it with pure math without a human brain. The reason that it works is similar to the way that the brain is doing it mathematically with neurons. There's nothing special about the ability to predict things slightly better than average. It's not evidence of psychic phenomena.
Interesting, yeah. How about for the last one that I talked about? What do you guys think about that one?
So a series of actions are all going to logically follow one from the next. So if you guess like how a story begins, like a person walks into a room, it's very natural to guess a series or sequence of actions, which makes sense and flow logically from one to the next. Also, your sample size is 1. In other words, it's not statistically significant. So if you had some truly random or like unpredictable data set, you could predict it with a large enough sample size, that might be interesting. But once again, it can still just be an example of you forming a model that's a predictive model with your neural structure.
But in itself, she has confirmed that everything has been quite accurate to what she has been doing on her end. So
you're just predicting like typical things people do on a typical basis, and you're typically going to be right about such predictions. Like I predict you had breakfast this morning, right? Is that like difficult?
Yeah. No, I understand where you're coming from. But what I'm basically trying to get at right here is if these predictive things, of course, but if I'm talking about if somebody were to, let's say, come into my mind in this model that I made, a room, and I were to just simply describe that this phenomenon, the actions that she has done and such things like that, regardless of how generic it is, the point is to talk about and suggest that these actions are 100% accurate to what her intention is while she was doing it, the actions on her part.
Yeah, so
not sure
first of all, you're doing it with the person you know very well. Take this into account. Using just mathematical methods, Facebook figured out that it was either Facebook or Amazon, I forget. Their psychometric model figured out that a woman was pregnant before she even knew it herself, and started showing her advertisements for pregnancy-related products.
I believe that was Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. So they figured out that she was pregnant before she did, because she was doing things and buying things and looking at stuff that was like typical of people that are pregnant. And this actually was a lawsuit because essentially is, in this case, like getting her into trouble. So yeah, we're good with math at figuring out how to predict things. The brain does exactly the same type of trick, just using biological wet neurons instead of computer mathematics. It's not psychic.
I'm not talking about predicting. I'm talking about simply observing the act that's going on within the conscious framework.
It's the same thing. It's still kind of predicting. If you want to test it, try to publish it in an academic journal. Like, look at the parapsychology journal and how they try to do things. If you think you've actually discovered a way to demonstrate real parapsychology, try the James Randi challenge, try to publish it in a journal, and if you succeed, you'll be a millionaire.
But do try to study statistics and machine learning beforehand, so you don't just conclude that you have psychic powers when you're actually just doing something that neurons do mathematically.
And if not, the universe is just cool, even if telekinesis or mind reading isn't true.
Well, the funny thing is that mind reading does exist using the same description that I gave of how neurons approximate a given input we train a neural network on the fMRI and EEG data from a human being, and then we watch the neurons subsequently, and then we reproduce the words that they're thinking in their brain with about a 70 to 80% accuracy.
And yes, that is absolutely correct. We can know people picking which option they're going to choose before they pick it.
Whole sentence.
But that's with technology, and so that's physical, and that is also amazing. And so it could be that there's stuff like that. It just doesn't end up being supernatural.
Boom. That's actually very interesting to have a conversation with people. This is exactly what I've been looking for.
Oh, I'll leave you with this parting thought. James Randi is somewhat famous for telling people that no matter how smart or well-educated you are, you can be deceived. This applies to everyone. Yeah, pardon?
100%. Yeah.
Really enjoyed this topic. Thank you for bringing it up. We enjoyed the conversation with you as well.
Appreciate it very much. Everybody have a good day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, Alien.
Well, that was actually a really good topic. Our next person is Fepto.
Oh, God.
Fepto, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Destroying baby slayers. Well, there's no baby slayers here, but what's on your mind, sir?
I was going to kind of pick up where you guys are actually leaving off.
Sure. What's on your mind?
Well, you seem to come to and you can stop me and tell me if I'm strawmanning your position in any way, but it seems that you guys have come to a conclusion of how predictive the human mind is. And look, I don't think that people are unpredictive. I wouldn't say that at all, but I would say it's something that is not exactly calculable to the finest degrees. Yeah, I think if you have like something like such a wide range as 20% chance of being wrong, that is a wide range. And it shows that the human mind is truly not monolithic. It doesn't think one way or the other. There are other underlying things as to the uniqueness of the human mind that cannot be predicted.
You mean with the mind reading having like a 70-80% accuracy rate?
Yeah, I mean 20%. That's actually significant. That means that there's 20%. Well, that means it is not able actually with certainty give you an answer as to what somebody's going to do. That people are not just inputs and outputs.
To be fair, though, the crudeness of the instruments, which is EEG and fMRI, which usually isn't real time, is the primary limiting factor. And every single time you increase the number of EEG, like if you go from 32 to 64 electrodes, the accuracy goes up like 4 or 5 times. So if you increase the accuracy of the measurements, it's entirely plausible that the inaccuracy goes away.
You're saying it's plausible that inaccuracy disappears?
As you increase the resolution of the instruments used to measure the brain, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. You're saying it's plausible. I don't think you have any factual evidence to back up your claim.
Well, the evidence is that as you increase the accuracy of the predictions of what the person was thinking go up at like a geometric rate, right? So every time we
increasing the resolution, what does that look like?
So, like just with EEGs, for example, there's one electrode in every little sector of your scalp, and so if you have 32 of them versus 64 of them, the accuracy is like 4 times higher with 64 than it is with 32. And if you increase that further, the setups that they use for the very best experiments, they have like 200 or 500 or 1,000 electrodes. And these are just on the surface of your scalp. They're not even invasively inside of the brain. They're just measuring surface brainwaves. So as we increase the precision of the measurement, we don't know if there is unpredictability.
In all variables, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Like why are you missing 20% of the time? Like why do you need
we're only using a very
certainty?
small we're only using a very small number of measuring electrodes, so the data is very imprecise, and we're able to get
let's just say
extremely high precision even with very imprecise measurement.
Well, let's just say if you took a 1080p square and then all of a sudden you made it a 4K square. Does the squareness change? And that's the issue that I'm having here is you're coming to an assumption that you're just not seeing something. I don't think the doctors had that assumption, which is why they are not throwing as many electrodes at it as you're claiming they should to increase accuracy.
What are you talking about? Literally, we build new things with more electrodes to get higher accuracy, and we've been doing that for decades, and that's how we've gotten to the level of accuracy we've gotten to today. So we literally are doing that, and we literally do see, as we increase the level of complexity of the machine we're using, we get better data. And that's the trend we've seen in literally every field ever.
So the question why would I deny that claim over what he's actually saying?
That's what he's saying. He's literally saying that as we increase the machine, as we increase the power of the machine, we can read your mind better. That's all he's saying.
Yeah, no, you introduce a new variable. You're talking about complexity. He's talking about visually. He's talking about being able to actually map out your brain.
He's talking about the electrodes that are reading your brain. The electrodes are the thing that touch your brain and read the data. So if you have more things that get more data, it gets more accurate predictions. That's all he's saying.
Okay, rather than
complicated machine, more predictions.
Okay, rather than changing around the complexity of not just what's the data that you're actually reading, but changing around the how should I put it, the model in which they come to conclusions based on the data they've received. That's kind of how I was deeming this complexity to increase. But you're literally just you're just saying what he's saying. They're increasing the resolution. So when I brought up the example of, let's just say there's a square and you see it in a 1080p resolution, the squareness doesn't change the minute that you change it to 4K. It's still a square. There's no extra variables. To assume that there are extra variables that you're not seeing is, well, that's what I mean. It's just a conjectural assumption.
But there's data. The data is simple, and it supports the conclusion that every time you increase the precision of the measurement, you're able to increase the accuracy of the prediction. That's the data we have, right? So if we have a graph, every time the number of electrodes goes up by 2, the accuracy goes up by 4, then you wouldn't conclude that it's just going to stop doing that because you hit the square or whatever and there's no further detail.
You think it's just electrodes is the only reason that the accuracy is increasing, or is it just a contributing factor?
Well, the accuracy of the data can be enhanced using a variety of analysis methods like Laplacian transforms, where they essentially do some mathematical cleanup of the data to get even more precise predictions with the same number of electrodes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Results without increasing the number of electrodes, you can still improve the results, and they've done that multiple times.
Yeah, but it's not just the electrodes improving.
Who cares about the electrodes? As we improve the machine, we can
you cared about the electrodes.
The point is that the electrodes are the easiest way to get more precise data. You can also do cleanup and denoising to get more precise data. You can also do, things that are in the methodological approach that could do better results with the same data. The point is, with the current methodology we have no reason to think that given improvements in the measuring devices and cleanup of the data, that we're going to hit a point where we just can't predict what people think. But the question is, why is this important to you? It sounds like you're concerned about some concept of free will. Is it for theological reasons?
No. It's not that important to me. I'm just saying no, it's not a concept of free will. And I'm sorry, I'm not a free willist. I'm not a free willy person. But I am a person who believes that the mind transcends technology to the point where you are unable to actually predict. Like you can see the data all you want, but is it accurate and accurately representing the data? That's when you come to a conclusion.
What? That was
Are you just asking?
No, it had nothing. Okay, so when I made that proposition, it had nothing to do with what you're claiming. It had to do with the philosophical basis of us being able to accurately interpret the meaning of something, of data that comes in, rather than the fact that data exists.
Well, the fun thing is that the interpretation is not being done in like a human understandable way. It's being done by a machine learning model. So they literally they take data of a person's thoughts, and they take the brain data, which is being scanned. They develop a machine learning model which is trained automatically without any human knowing exactly how it works. It's a neural network. It gets shown the data over and over again, and it develops the right tuning to match with what the brain is doing and what the thoughts are. And that's how they end up with the model that does these super high fidelity predictions, right? So we don't really know how the model works per se. We just know that you can train models to do anything without really knowing how they work.
Yeah, because, I mean, generally speaking, humans are somewhat predictable. It's not to say, though, that humans are monolithic. And I think that's the issue that I'm having with what you're trying to say, is that humans are, in fact, monolithic in nature, when they're really not like that.
Can I give an example where they were able to predict? Is they would give people choices between like ice cream flavor, and attached to this machine with the nodes, they were able to accurately predict which flavor they were going to predict.
In other words, they knew what ice cream they were going to pick before the person knew it themselves.
Yes.
Human brains are pretty monolithic.
They knew certain things about.
There's a Jennifer Aniston neuron. So if you put the same machine on a different brain, it'll get about the same results.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the ice cream goes, I mean, I don't know what data they took in. It probably had to do with what they currently like to eat, not activities they've participated in. And based on that, you would be able to know what kind of ice cream somebody would prefer. So, I mean, I'm sorry. That's to me, it's not too extravagant of a prediction.
So it seems like you're saying that you think human brains are sufficiently different that this machine might work for some people, but not other people.
I was saying in generalities it works. Yeah, I was saying it's not monolithic.
Wouldn't it work for?
Meaning it doesn't work out all the time. That's why you have 20% to 30% offshoots.
No, we have 20 to 30% offshoots because our technology isn't at a high enough level yet. Once it gets to a high enough level, it'll be like at a 0.0% offshoot.
Isn't that like? I'm sorry, that's like a faith-based assumption.
No,
and also, the percentage of
assumption.
it not working is individual words. So it's reproducing sentences that are being spoken aloud in the person's internal dialogue, in their own thoughts, and it's getting 1 or 2 of the words out of 10 wrong or blank, because it doesn't know what the word is. So it's like a transcript of your internal dialogue with some of the words mixed up.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I was supposed to take away from that. I'm not saying you're dumb. I just don't know.
It's not like there are people that are immune to it. There's not like people that it can't predict. It's not like it fails 100% on a person 20% of the time.
I'm not
his own stupidity.
No,
aren't correct.
I'm not even saying that. I'm saying it's pretty accurate. Yeah, I'm saying it's pretty accurate, but it's not able to predict in a monolith because people are not a monolith.
What does that mean?
Meaning that people do not act monolithically. They're not going to act in lockstep down the line, every attribute. Like, let's just say this. You have 2 kids that grow up in a poor home, the same poor home. They were treated the same exact way. They have the same exact food, same exact clothing.
Are you just trying to say that people are inconsistent?
They can and have. People have turned out with different results.
Yeah.
Now, let's just say they're identical twins as well. Let's just even improvise that because, you could say, it's pretty unequal input because, I didn't have a fair shot at the NBA because I didn't have the genetics of Michael Jordan. So let's take 2 twins who have the same genetics, the same parents, the same lifestyle. They can have contrasting results. Same interactions with the same people. They can end up being completely different people.
Yeah,
it'll still be able to read their mind. It'll read both of their minds just as well.
we're all in agreement that people can start out the same and end up different, and we're all in agreement that a person could think one thing one day and a totally different thing the next day, right? The point is that it's
Doesn't
trained.
that get rid of predictive models? The predictive model.
What it's trained
It
on
doesn't,
is the words.
it doesn't predict that somebody's going to think the opposite thing that they thought the day before.
The point is
supposed to
not
predict
that
the same.
it's not predicting what you're going to think. It's reading the words as you think them from your brain, right? So when a person says, "I like vanilla," it will say, "I blank vanilla," or "I happy vanilla," or "me happy vanilla," right? Like it might read it slightly wrong, but it's correct.
I don't have an issue. Yeah, I mean, I know that. Well, I don't know if they type them out on. They're able to see words now, like actually see the words. Is that what you guys are actually saying?
Yes.
So what happens first is a person looks at a bunch of text.
I don't have an issue with that.
And while they look at the text, it reads their brain and their eyes at the same time. So it knows what words they're looking at when they think, which neurons fire up at the same time. Takes that data, correlates it, and then it knows a very high precision what a person is thinking without looking at anything. Yeah.
So your objection is the one where we can predict what you're going to decide before they decide it, and you think that there's a limit to that.
Oh, I do think there's a limit.
It could be the case. We just don't know. But as the accuracy increases with the instrumentation and methodology, we don't see a reason for there to be a limit.
Why do you think there's going to be a limit?
Generally, I think it's a assumption, sort of. I mean, like there's probably data out there that would support my claim that people have just. I mean, like you're even bringing it up. They're breaking the models, and it's not just with the mind reading. It happens to do with algorithms tracking how they may act every single day, and looking at their search results. People can still act outside of the algorithms that are set up in place to advertise to them.
The algorithm is your brain. So it's looking at your brain chemistry, your brain neurology, and saying, based off of this, we know what you're going to do. You can't violate your brain chemistry. That programming is you.
I think you're generalizing. But you're assuming we're making like a global claim that like algorithms are going to be able to just be trained once and then predict everything you're going to do for all time.
I didn't say train. Okay, that's a real claim.
What we're saying is that given a person's brain at any given time, if trained on the state of that person's brain at that time, it's then able to read the thoughts that they are having.
Yeah, make some predictive models.
Right.
I'm not even denying that.
It's doing an interpretive model of what thoughts they're thinking, and it can also do a predictive model of what thought they think they're going to be aware of having before they have it.
Yeah. I thought they think that maybe on some things.
This has been demonstrated. We've already done this. Why do you think there's going to be a limit?
The fact that there's a 20% offshoot or 30% offshoot, the limit's right there.
Think that number isn't going to go down as we gain more technology?
Experiment that they did with a particular level of precision.
I didn't say anything about the number going down. That's kind of pushing me, or it'd be pigeonholing me, because that's not a position I've ever held.
No, that's our position. Our position that the number is going to continue to go down. The accuracy is going to go up. The inaccuracy is going to go down.
I see what you mean.
Why do you think that is not going to happen?
I didn't say it won't. I didn't say down the line it wouldn't happen, that maybe you'd reach a 10%. Like offshoot.
And why are you stopping at 10%? No, none of the science says it's going to stop at 10%. Why did you pick 10%? Why not 1% or 0.1%?
Because I do truly believe that human minds are, in fact, unique and advanced enough to not work in a monolithic, algorithmic way.
You don't think that brain chemistry is like a computatable process, like a computer that can be read by another computer to know what you're going to think?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, here's a good example. What's a serial killer who ended up on Netflix? What's his name?
There's a lot of them. Dahmer?
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, the famous one.
There's a lot of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Would your algorithms? I mean, do you think the algorithms truly would be able to predict that he would make a profession in Jesus and repent of his sins and his past crimes against other humans?
Yes.
The algorithm. Okay.
That's a typical behavior.
So you don't think that we have the current? You don't have the current technology.
Things that are like pressed with guilt and no other options. Yeah, it's a very common pattern.
That's like
no. I mean, he has psychopathy. That's not something that's reversible. In most generalities. He
also has incarceration.
That's reversible.
He also has incarceration, right? It's a trend of people who do bad things that are incarcerated. They have nothing to do, and they sit around reading books, and it's very common for them to fall into religiosity.
Also, there's nothing
it's common?
that...
You think it's
extremely
common?
Common.
People in jail. How many people in jail turn to religion?
It's like 15%. It's a huge number.
That's not common.
It's a stereotype.
It's extremely common.
That doesn't make it common.
Yes, it does. Like the general public numbers are like, yes, the general percentage numbers of people who change religions is, I think, in the single digits. The percentage in prisons who change religions is extremely high. It is more common. It is one of the most common places to change religions is when you're in prison, because of the level of community you get, because of how close you are. You're more likely to adopt the ideologies of people around you.
And it's a survival tactic, because if you're with a large group that's strong,
really,
we'll leave you alone.
Here's a fun fact. Okay, what percentage of the population is?
You think there's a bunch of big, strong 1%. Christian groups inside jails?
What percentage? Just the percentage of the prison population.
That's not generally how it works.
Pipto, listen to me for a second. I'm giving you data. The percentage of the U.S. population that is Muslim is 1%. The percentage of the prison population that is Muslim is 18%. Do you think that it is because people in prison
kind of racist?
More likely, no. It's just a fact that a lot more people convert to a religion. A lot of people convert to religion while in prison, which they would not otherwise do.
And many who
are you
and once they're out of prison, many of them leave that religion. And once they're out of prison, they leave that religion. A lot of them do.
Okay, so have you already taken into account that they were not already Muslim before they went in?
Yes.
Yeah, how many?
1% of people going in are Muslim. 18% are Muslim after being in there for a long time.
You're taking the whole population. Okay, no, that's not how this works. You just gave me the whole population of Muslims that. Oh, guys, don't defend him. That was
you had a question. Will our algorithm be able to predict a conversion of a murderer in prison to a religious belief? Yes, that's an extremely common thing. Yes, that is a very predictable thing.
It will be able to predict.
Yeah. Yes, when it's good enough.
Okay. Yeah. You would be saying this on the basis of I'll say you're saying it on the basis of certain evidences from, let's just say, the outside world of marketing algorithms, marketing bots. Based on marketing bots, you would say it's able to predict each and every individual's religious well, I don't know if you'd go as far to go religious affiliation as well.
Yes,
here's some data. So 70% of people in one Muslim survey converted to Islam in prison, and only 20% outside of prison.
Well, so I'd go further. I'd say yes. I think the Amazon algorithm that identified the pregnant lady would work on prisoners to be able to predict their conversion before they knew they were going to convert. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I do believe that's a blind claim, though, right?
It worked on the pregnant lady. Why wouldn't it work on the prisoners?
Because they're two different people with two different circumstances, and I believe you are making a faith-based claim. It's not based on evidence.
Actually, because the prisoners probably don't have money to buy stuff while they're in prison.
Well, no. So that's a very evidence-based claim.
No, they have some money. They have some money. Don't mock it.
The way the Amazon algorithm works is that there are trends that people do before they're pregnant. Like cravings for certain kinds of foods, which are very common among people who are pregnant. And so if the person doesn't know they're pregnant, but they have certain cravings or tendencies that are common among pregnant people. No, like she doesn't know she's pregnant.
Yeah, I know. She's pregnant. I know, but because of the fetus, it causes certain things.
Yes, and like there are certain tendencies. So if there are certain tendencies among prisoners, like they read certain books, or they spend more time in the library, or they spend more time with certain other prisoners, or talking to certain other prisoners.
Yeah, the guy picked up the Bible. He's going to become a Christian. What a good algorithm!
Yes, that's how the algorithm works, and it works. He picked up the Bible.
I'm sorry.
Congratulations. That's how algorithms work. They're predictive models based off of certain actions that you do. Yes, and it works.
No, I mean, I get it. If you take something as general as they read the Bible every day, like, I'm sorry. That's
what else is there to do in prison?
That's not very. You know how you guys have mocked like how the Bible made certain prophecies, and you'd mock it.
Fipto. People in prison have a lot of time to sit there and read a Bible all day or read a Quran all day. So of course that's going to happen. And there's a survival tactic too. You're going to join with one of these religious groups so that you don't get beat up by the other prisoners as often or at all, depending how strongly.
Not all the time. Not all the time.
It doesn't need to be all the time.
In some cases, actually, this would occur with a family friend of mine. Her cousin. I don't know if she's if he was put into a Mexican jail or an American jail. But no, he was gang raped because he was a Christian.
Great. What does this have to do with?
Happens in all kinds of prisons. Unfortunately, it happens in Canadian prisons too.
Okay, I'm just saying. It's
maybe you better drop
when you put up this
facade of a person in prison
for protection
to Christianity, and we gave you data that people convert to religious affiliation while in prison by like a 5-to-1 ratio. But do you have any other questions?
5-to-1 ratio. You're talking about the they went to prison.
Answer to your question is yes,
religious.
The algorithms will be able to predict the conversions of psychopaths. That is an extremely
what about the deconversion?
Can I actually just point out
predict that? Yes.
That these type of predictions are the type of predictions you would expect from something that we can look into the future with something like science. You were talking about how you make tease maybe about the prophecies within religion. And if they could do any sort of things like this, we would be a little more impressed. But we don't get that. We don't get the type of Old or New Testament miracles that seem to happen quite frequently just a few hundred or 1,000 years ago.
Well, you didn't see I forget what they call the land. It's been around for like a decade and a half. No, the two cities by the Jordan River that were destroyed by sulfur balls. It wouldn't be prophetic. It wouldn't be prophetic. It would be a miracle though, because it wasn't predicting the future when it was laid out.
Yeah, that would be a great prediction, predicting exactly when two cities would be destroyed with no prior evidence. It's a great prediction. Yes, didn't happen, but yes.
What about Jesus when he predicted the desolation of the temple? You don't think that was a pretty good prediction, that the Jews were kind of in good standing with Rome, and then he said this generation will not pass away until all these things come to be, and one of them happened to be their temple being destroyed. Was that not good enough of a prediction?
Well, another one was of his second coming, which didn't happen, so no.
Yeah, no, he said, he's saying you'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds, and the language that he's using is judgment language. So he didn't mean I'm literally coming on the clouds. You'll literally see, like in the Old Testament, where it says Yahweh is coming on the clouds. You don't literally see Yahweh coming in on the clouds. It's judgment language that Jesus was using, and it was intentional because they recognized that language. It's the same language Yahweh used when he was pronouncing judgment on the land.
So you're going to cherry pick the ones that did happen and ignore
Like,
the ones.
I assume you also take the stars falling from heaven literally, when that's judgment language that he's using.
Yeah, the Bible. The people who wrote the Bible were just ignorant, and they thought the stars could literally fall. They're just wrong. So, yeah, that was literal.
I mean, you have to
Did I
remember
disconnect?
this book does. No, you're here, but you have to remember this book believes in giants and angels and things, so it's not exactly a science text.
Nor is it a book, right? It's an anthology of different texts written by authors who disagree with each other.
That's
It's
also
been
true.
collectively, systematically theologized into some so-called system, even though the system is not actually compatible with itself. It contains numerous inconsistencies. Even in a single text, you have like doublets and triplets of the same story that are inconsistent.
You're jumping somewhere
or
else.
They give multiple accounts of the same events that are not compatible with each other in a single so-called story that you call a book,
Oh, yeah.
which is not written by the same author. Not even in a
Yeah,
single story. is
you're
written by the
gonna
same
run the same line your buddy ran before he converted to a Catholic.
What does that have to do with anything?
He had a whole thing about the resurrection of Jesus being inconsistent.
You're talking
He's
about
talking about,
Xerxes, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
an argument
King
and then they
Xerxes,
convert,
yeah.
or that argument is now debunked. Is that your argument?
No, obviously he didn't think that argument was good enough.
So Xerxes wasn't familiar with most of the
So you're
issues
saying
of
that
the
he
Bible
accepted
outside of
fallacious? Well, I've already walked through why he's actually wrong on that. But he just rejected it, and then I guess now he's starting to see that he's not just going to faceplant into a religion.
We don't care about how.
Okay, then
what
we'll
converted
go back to what I
Xerxes.
was talking about. Jesus' novel prediction of the destruction of the temple.
So a
And the
literary
fact that he was using
character.
judgment language, stars
Can
were not
make-
literally falling from the sky. That's
A
judgment
literary-
language. You see it in the Old Testament, where stars falling from the sky? No, they didn't think stars were falling from the sky. Yahweh's using judgment language. Yahweh's not literally coming in on the cloud. Jesus wasn't even saying that either. It's judgment language. He was saying this temple is going to be destroyed.
The problem with literature making ex eventu vaticinium prophecies is that what these are things that have already happened being justified and explained as though they were predicted and have meaning and purpose within a theological system. We can show numerous examples.
Isn't that assuming the church didn't have Matthew before the destruction of the temple?
And the dating of prophecies is often demonstrably ex eventu. The best example is Daniel, right? It's exhaustively established that Daniel's written around like 265. It's a Maccabean rant about Antiochus humiliating the temple by doing Greek-style religious practices, which is the abomination that brings desolation. Every single thing about it lines up with someone who's very angry at Antiochus. All the predictions that it makes are not predictions; they're things that happened prior to 265. Everything that it says that happens after 265 didn't happen as it was predicted because it fails as a prophecy. It's not a prophecy.
I'm letting you know the church fathers
different languages.
disagree.
Three different languages by three totally different literary styles. Right? It's in Aramaic, it's in Hebrew, and it's in Greek. All three of these texts get combined together and treated like they were written by one person, even though there's no way they're written by the same person. And the only things that it gets right happen prior to the first date that anyone can show that this text existed or that anyone quoted this text in showing knowledge of its existence. So if it only appears after the events that it describes, in what way can you say that it's a prophecy?
You're just saying the oldest manuscript that we have of Jesus, of Matthew 24.
I'm talking about the earliest manuscript of Daniel. Did you follow what I just said?
Okay, where are you going with this? Hold on.
Okay, so
because I thought
the point. One sec. Let me clarify. One sec, Victor. So the point was, if the text where the oldest text we have has a written prophecy, and that text is older than when the thing it's prophesying occurred, it's not a prophecy because they could have written that after the fact and just claimed.
Okay, you said that backwards, I think.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
so
it's newer than the events that it's describing. That's right.
So if the written document was written after the thing it prophesies, then it wasn't a prophecy because it's post-diction. They wrote it after the thing happened.
You're saying the Greek Septuagint didn't exist?
that's the cases that Ix was listing. He was listing one case, the case that is the oldest that we know was definitely predicted before the events that it was prophesying, which is the book of Daniel. That one is a good example because at least we know that that document was written prior to the event it predicts.
And if you think this is just some kind of anti-religious rant, just go to YouTube, search up the Book of Daniel is a pious forgery. It's a Christian scholar giving a lecture on why it's the case that agrees with all the secular scholars. They're in agreement that there's abundant evidence that the Book of Daniel is not written in 600. It's written around 265 by someone who's angry at Antiochus.
You mean 600 BC, 265 BC, or AD?
BC.
Wait, so it's 265 BC.
I believe so, yeah. I might have it off by a little bit.
Okay, but Daniel makes claims about
600. Yeah.
No, not about 600 BC. That doesn't even matter.
Oh, you think
makes
it's
claims
evangelical
about
prophecy
the
about
coming of the
Jesus, yeah.
Messiah.
But
it makes
it's
claims
wrong.
about the coming of the
You just-
Messiah.
you
What his
don't
goal
understand that it's
is,
about Antiochus. It's actually
and
about
Jesus,
Antiochus.
Jesus identified what his goal was to establish the very kingdom that Daniel was prophesying about, that he was supposed to establish. It was the kingdom
And
of
this
God.
interpretation was made up by Christians, but it was not believed at the time of Daniel being discussed.
No, that is false. That is false. No, Jews believe the Messiah is supposed to bring the rule of God here on earth.
So Jews
That's
had
what
a
the kingdom
variety
of God
beliefs.
means. It means
So
the
you
rule
actually
of God.
don't know what the word Messiah means. Messiah means like a king, right? And
Yeah,
so
a
beliefs-
Savior, King. Yeah, I get it.
beliefs-
But there's
a
one
huge
specific
difference
Messiah that Jews
between
recognize.
there's a huge difference between a political king savior and a religious, spiritual, salvific, right? So a majority of Jews believed then, and still believe, that the Messiah is a political savior of
Yes.
the Jewish people,
Yes.
a king, not a salvific
Yeah.
that does something to do with original sin, right? The idea
Yeah,
of
and hold on.
that
So,
Jesus saves
so
is
that's a
for
lie.
something
That's a
like
lie. What you're about to say is a
change
lie
in original sin.
because you go to
It
Daniel
is a
9.
novel
The
idea
goal
that
of the
was not
Messiah is to
believed
put
by
an
Jews.
end to sin. You're a liar.
The goal of the Messiah was to be a king and a savior for the
Oh
people.
my gosh, you're a liar. No, the goal of the Messiah was also to put a death. Mr.
That's an
Batman alive.
interpretation of particular sects
I'm calling
of
him Mr.
Messianic
Batman.
Jews and Christians.
Oh well, no. I mean, I'm just calling him what he is, a liar. He doesn't know all the revelation, and he looks to slander Christianity, so he's going to speak ignorantly.
But
I don't
very
agree with
Messiah's
this
Mr. Ron,
job
he's
is to put
pointing
an
it out.
end
Lord
to
to Jews
sin.
at the time
That's
of the writing of
that's
the book of
what.
Daniel, because
And
Christianity
he's supposed,
did not
and he
exist
is
yet.
supposed to bring
You're
salvation
retroactively
to his
interpreting
people.
a thing that someone wrote
No,
around
it's not just me
265
interpreting. If I showed
to
you
be
word for
meaning
word in
something
Daniel,
about Jesus.
would you shut your mouth if I showed you word for word in Daniel
Excuse me?
what I'm talking about? No, I mean, like, nobody here on your side should be accepting what you're saying. What you're saying is just blatantly false.
But please be nice to everyone. Be nice to the
So
panel.
you're claiming that
It's
all
not
Jews
nice to
had
be
a
told
single
you're wrong and then
interpretation
continue to
of who the
lie
Messiah
through
was
your
supposed
own
to be,
ignorance.
which is not the case. There were dozens of different interpretations, different messianic and apocalyptic cults who believed that
Sure,
different types of the
tons of
Messiah
them.
would appear. They did
Why would
not
I dispute
all
that?
agree with your interpretation that Jesus was a salvific.
Sure,
Many
not
of them
everybody
believed-
agrees.
Many of them believed that what the Messiah, the king, was supposed to do was to bring political salvation to the people of Israel who had
Both.
been humiliated by repeated invasions, by having their temple destroyed and so on.
Yeah,
They wanted a political leader,
okay.
and many of them are
Here's the
still waiting
issue.
for that political leader to this day.
Yeah, so here's the issue. That political leader already came, and guess what? You see what? The Western world, the Western expansion coming about by the reigns of the Messiah. Oh yeah, Christ is King. The expansion of Western culture. Oh, you don't like slavery all that much, like certain forms
This
of
is your
slavery all that much.
retroactive
Oh,
interpretation.
look, it's not
based on your
retroactive.
systematic theology
It's not
to try to explain it
retroactive.
through the lens
Okay,
of
man.
your
Okay.
particular denomination.
But
right?
Yeah.
Early
The
Jewish
transformation
Messianic
of the
cults
world is one
had
of the
a huge
points that,
variety of different
as to why
interpretations
Jesus is Messiah
what
for
kind
the
of
Jews.
messianic
It's because
prophecy
he actually
is.
did transform the world, and he brought the Gentiles to Yahweh. That is the goal of the Messiah.
Crypto, please let people finish when they're responding to you, and please
He interrupted
don't tell
me.
people, and please don't tell
Don't-
people
don't-
to shut
don't
their
pull
mouths, because we've been polite and respectful with you. We expect to be reciprocal.
But it's
You're
okay.
simply not familiar.
Okay, but it's not reciprocal respect when you're corrected, and I even offer, look, if I showed you the evidence, you're just blatantly wrong because he's just lying through his teeth right now.
But
and you guys are just
Crypto,
willing to put up with it. I don't know why.
okay.
Your unfamiliarity with religious scholarship is not licensed to call people liars because they disagree with what you think a given verse means.
It's what the text says. The text says the Messiah's goal is to put an end to sin, to bring salvation. That is part of it. It's not just, you spoke of it like it doesn't say this in the text. It does. Now, what also is supposed to be had is he's supposed to bring the kingdom of God, the rule of God on the earth. And that's exactly what Jesus did. The transformation of the world. If Jews want to see why Jesus is the Messiah, why are a bunch of Gentiles worshiping Yahweh?
If you want to become informed about the religious scholarly consensus on the Book of Daniel being a pious forgery, I encourage you to do some research. If you want to become informed on the consensus that there was a huge variety of different beliefs about what the Messiah was supposed to be, but that the basic meaning of the word meant king, not necessarily a salvific, and didn't specifically have to do with the idea of a spiritual leader, it had to do with the idea of a political leader in the eyes of most Jews.
I know. He's supposed to rule all things. He's the Son of Man who comes on the clouds, who rules all things in heaven and on earth.
People disagree with
I know this.
Still do.
Flipto, please.
Sure,
Because
people disagree
Ix was
with me,
giving
but
a
dude.
very lovely explanation, but it's going to go around in a circle because there's a very specific reason why Jews aren't Christian. That's because they don't see him as the Messiah. Because the Messiah was very specifically a political and not a religious position. It meant someone who was going to, as king, reconquer Jerusalem. And to the Jews, the moment that Jesus died, it meant he was very specifically not the Messiah. Now, what happens,
and his followers thought the same thing.
And what happens is they rewrote it. They said, you know what? Let's make it a resurrection story. And so now Jesus resurrects. Paul comes along. He invites the Christians in, and it becomes an entire new religion. Now Messiah means someone who is going to have a second coming and do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as the Jews were concerned, still no Jerusalem. And so even though the Christians were claiming Messiah, they're like, that's cool. Our land, the entire point of us getting a king and getting a Messiah to get Jerusalem back, still not ours.
Do you see how unreasonable that is? Because, look, if you read the narrative of the Gospels, the narrative was they themselves thought we had the wrong guy. He's not the Messiah because he died. Like our guy who we're supposed to be following, who's winning, he just died. He was not supposed to die. Jesus, I mean, they were completely ignorant because Jesus said his goal was to die. And the prophecy itself said that the Messiah was to be cut off by his own people. So, and if you went into like outside of Daniel, you just go to like, it's not Micah, Zechariah. It says what? The shepherd is going to be led to the slaughter by the sheep for 30 silver coins. Like, these are things that were already prophesied about the Messiah to come. It's not just, and I don't have to just stick to Daniel. But here's the real narrative. You said that they just continue to push this lie. So what you're saying is, in order to push this lie, they were willing to be filleted and boiled alive.
Yes, in order to be wrong, people die for being wrong all the time. We saw that on
No, they don't die for lies. Knowable lies.
There's still people who think
not that they were tricked, but that they knowably lied about the whole thing, fabricated it.
So
there's people who are still upset that they didn't go into the spaceship with the other Heaven's Gate cultists, and who still believe and still teach the teachings of the Heaven's Gate cultists that all killed themselves. There are people who believe
because they believe something. Yeah, they believe something. Yeah, they thought that they were going to receive some kind of resurrection or something. I don't know, by drinking the Kool-Aid poison, the poison Kool-Aid. Yeah, I know about that story.
A silly Christian myth that people don't die for lies. People die for lies all the time. They know it's
no. Okay, really quick. Lies that they know of, like that they are first-hand accounts. They know it's a lie.
Yep.
And they could save themselves by denying it.
Yep.
Nice.
You want an obvious example?
Case?
Like a super easy, obvious example?
Yeah. Can I have a case where somebody died for what they knew to be a lie?
Jews in the basement dying.
Okay, man.
Yeah, there's this silly, stupid Christian idea that people don't die for lies. Yeah,
but here's okay.
Yeah, they do.
You're gonna bring up somebody trying to preserve life. They valued something above their life, meaning the preservation of somebody else's life.
Yes.
So what was the thing that they were trying to preserve by continuing the lie up to the point of being filleted and boiled alive?
Ideology.
What you think that's really that important to people?
Usually religious ideology, but not always religious.
It seems pretty important to you.
Okay, really quick. Did the guy who led the poison Kool-Aid ceremony, did he drink the Kool-Aid?
Jim Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Did he? Google it. I'm googling this.
I'm pretty sure they killed anyone who didn't take.
Honestly, it's probably a bad idea to use Jim Jones because he could have just been suicidal.
But my other point
that
was
would be the same
9/11.
claim of all the other disciples, is that they're all just suicidal.
Your question was, did he drink the Kool-Aid? Not with regard to him being suicidal.
Jim Jones biography.
Yeah, what was his name? Was it actually Jim Jones?
Yeah, it looks James Warren Jones.
James Warren Jones.
Suicide. So no, not the Kool-Aid. He died by a gunshot. Suicide.
Wait, did he drink the juice? It says he died at 47, so I assume he drank it.
As the leader, he had to make sure everybody else drank it, though.
Death. Yes.
Anyway, it's not necessary for people to believe that they're lying.
No. They all knew it. I think they all knew it was poison.
It's not. Look, let's just get back to the original example, right? When people develop religious ideology, they generally form a belief in it, even though it's a gradual process of each person sort of adding to the set of beliefs. All the people believe that all the people before them have done so honestly and that the beliefs are true. The lie is not something that each individual person is aware of. It's a constructive fiction that they all come to believe in, right?
Okay,
so if you look at every gospel is different from the previous gospel. The gospels change and innovate, clearly showing that each religious community that wrote each gospel held different beliefs about Jesus and had different stories about him. And so these natural sort of telephone games that people play with beliefs and stories, where they collect all the stories, and whoever writes it down in the gospel assumes that all the stories that they've heard are true, right? Now, each of the gospel writers can believe that their version of it is true because they all heard a different version of the telephone game. It doesn't require them to think that they're lying, right?
Okay, I think there's a lot of assumptions baked into there. You would have to assume that they just all believe in different Jesuses. Like, of course, you're going to have some people. Yeah, maybe they heard different things.
It's just
but we're talking about the text. We're talking about the text that would have been shared between all of them.
They wrote different stories because they heard different things and reported those in their gospels, right? So we don't have to assume that the author of the gospel made stuff up. We can just conclude that they heard different stories from different people. Did any given person know that they were making it up? We don't know. But when people play telephone, when they're 5 years old, sitting around in a circle, they do the exact same thing by just making mistakes.
But I was going to bring up the example Bartholomew, who was filleted alive. He's either boiled or filleted alive. I believe it was filleted. On what basis? You brought up ideology. Explain that to me, because you were saying that they were dying for a belief that they actually held to. What was that belief?
That Christ was some kind of salvific Messiah.
Well, sure that he was, but what you see in the Gospels is they went into hiding because he died. So what do you think made them come out?
I don't quite understand the question.
Well, okay, so in the Gospel narrative, the apostles saw their guy die, and they went into hiding in fear of the Jews. After that, what made them think to come out?
Well, there's a number of things that happened. One of the things that happened was because of the destruction of Jerusalem due to the riots.
Dude,
the
40 years after, I'm sorry.
The major
They had one reason to create churches and to go out.
And the major branch of Christianity that was dominated by James and the other Judaists, if you will, that were more interested in practicing a Judaic-centric version of Christianity, was essentially exterminated by the destruction of Jerusalem, along with the Sadducee version of Judaism, right? So you had two versions of Judaism and Christianity that were dominant in Jerusalem that were wiped out. Afterwards,
I understand partially where you're going with this, except it's not conducive to the argument. I'm asking you, what exactly made them want to come out?
The thing that led to the flourishing of Christianity was the extermination of its competitors.
It was Tom
Okay,
Cruise.
man. Okay. Yeah, they went out and killed their opponents like Muslims. No, I'm sorry. That's
no,
not
they
an
didn't
argument.
do it. The Romans did it. The point is, when the Romans wiped out
They killed
Jewish
the Jews.
Christianity, the Jewish
Yeah,
Christianity
it's almost like Jesus predicted it. Yeah,
and
Jesus
Paul's
predicted it
version
40 years
was the
prior.
survivor and was the one that predominated.
Look, man, I asked you one simple question, and you're not even answering it. And I'm not. It's not a gotcha. It's not like, oh, ha, ha, you don't know, you're stupid. I can tell you. You can just ask me.
Actually, they did kill off a lot of people. They killed off the Kahuna who were in Hawaii before they moved in, and then they took over and wiped them out.
Yeah, and just so you know, Jesus said you could escape the destruction by running to the mountains. So it was
Why should
a
people living there
destruction.
have to run? That's ridiculous. They came in and slaughtered people.
Josephus noted it out that the people that survived were the Christians who heard Jesus and listened to him, and they actually fled to the mountains. They didn't try to save the temple. They didn't try to fight. And the people that died were the Jews. Josephus noted this out. Yeah, and just so you know, the answer is they came out of hiding because they saw the resurrected Messiah. Not because they heard he resurrected, they saw him. That's why they came out.
The belief that a person who's a major religious leader appears to people after their death is widespread and common in almost all religious groups. People have this
and they all went out and got filleted for it. They couldn't participate in markets.
The point is not that they don't believe it. The point is that people do. After a religious leader dies, people have intense visions of that religious leader. It's been reproduced.
It wasn't just a vision.
Other religious leaders.
It wasn't a private revelation. They shared this revelation together.
People routinely confuse these experiences with real experiences. They think that it really happened.
Okay, so
it's
you
been reproduced
think
in other religions.
Jesus' disciples was a group of 12 schizophrenics, is what you're telling me.
I'm saying that people have the delusion of seeing dead loved ones, and especially of major religious leaders.
Sure.
It's a common occurrence. It's well documented. There's multiple books about it.
This is another common Christian
get the nature
myth.
of your argument.
This is another common Christian myth that you can't have shared delusions. There literally are shared delusions. Folia do is an actual case.
I'm sorry. I've got to head out.
There's like communal reinforcement. Communal reinforcement is most likely what happened with the apostles and the 500. So yeah, those are extremely common things. It is not at all surprising that the apostles would have shared delusions of Jesus' resurrection.
And the
that makes sense.
example that I really wanted to press him on was, why did 9/11 happen? Because if no one, first of all, it doesn't have to be a lie. It is dying for being wrong. They were wrong about something. And on 9/11, they all died for something they thought was right. In fact, worse than that, they thought they were probably being moral. And that is the harm of religion. One of the
I mentioned Kahuna, which is a religion that was common in Hawaii before the Christians moved in there, and they just kind of took over. This whole idea that they should have run away is an excuse. Why should they leave their homeland when invaders come? It's the invaders are definitely the bad guys in that case. But the Maori had the Kahuna religion was very sexist too. So it's not that Christianity was any better. It's just different kind of sexism is all.
Religion, isn't it fun?
People in Judaism at Masada were rebels against Rome and were massacred because they held their ground and they died as martyrs. They actually mostly killed themselves before the Romans got there.
Well, it looks like we've come to the end of the show here. I'm just wondering, did anybody have any final thoughts they wanted to share about the episodes today? I did think that our conversation with Alien was particularly interesting. Really enjoyed that one. I think we had a number of good talks today. But what are people's thoughts about what we encountered today?
I guess I'll start just saying that thank you so much, all of our guests, for joining us. I don't think that we're gonna believe necessarily in a god for a necessary being. I don't know why quantum field theory and fluctuations seems to get them so upset, but it does. And I enjoyed, like you said, whether telekinesis or mind reading is true. There's a reason that James Randi's name gets brought up so often. It's because he really put them to the test. And there's a lot of good videos out there of him testing, people who do cold and unfortunately hot readings out there. And then, people die for a lie all the time, unfortunately. People die for being wrong. And even worse, sometimes even people know when they are wrong and are just malicious people. And so, yeah, but it was a good episode. I do want to thank Taco Randolph for hosting it and sending love to T-Jump and X and everyone out there.
Thank you, Amy. IX, what thoughts do you have for today?
Reciprocating the love to everybody on our panel and to our wonderful guests and audience for engaging with us. A couple of the things that we brought up today, we talked a little bit about scientific methodology and how you can learn more about why our best theories are developed with the methodology that they are. If you want to understand that stuff better, I highly recommend looking into a physicist who does like foundations of science called Tim Maudlin. If you want to see like a scientist who goes through all the other physicists' theories and kind of rates them based on like what their empiric strength is, how like theoretically plausible they are, and so on, doesn't just give you one personal favorite theory. Look at a physicist named Tim Maudlin. And if you want to know more about religious history and the best religious scholarship that is probing all the details of biblical and Canaanite and Hellenistic and Assyriology stuff, look into Myth Vision. And I would encourage everyone to especially watch a recent episode of Myth Vision, which shows that Moses, there's no documented evidence of any mention of Moses or the Tanakh prior to the 4th century BC. And there's evidence of Elephantine, which is a Jewish colony, writing extensively to and from Jerusalem about their colony without any mention of any of the figures or stories of the Tanakh. So Judaism is probably a more recently developed set of scriptures that developed much later than you probably think. And this is just the beginning of the rabbit hole of getting into the history of Canaanite religion, of which Judaism an offshoot. And it'll deepen your appreciation and understanding for what value the stories do have, and it could make you a more appreciative Jewish or Christian student of the Bible if you start looking into this stuff. But it's not going to be what you expect if you believe in the systematic theology and the sort of fictional history of which the Bible is filled with.
Thank you, X. T-Jump, did you have any final thoughts for today? Did you want to talk about Church of the Best Possible World?
Let's see. I have a debate coming up on the 10th at a local church, and I'm going to Australia and doing a debate or a lecture at the ISCAST conference on like November 29th, I think.
This is great. Will these debates be on your YouTube channel?
Hopefully. I think they're both recorded, but I'm unsure.
Oh, that's great. And you have some more coming up too?
Just those two.
Well, congratulations in advance. I hope they go well for you. And for people who want more information about T-Jump's Church of the Best Possible World, you can go to theisthelpline.com, click on About Us, scroll down to T-Jump's profile information, and all the links that you'll need are there. Taco, did you have any final thoughts?
I just feel like they don't listen to anything we say, man. I was talking to both those guys earlier, and I answered their question, and then they started asking me questions about like stuff that I had just explained without actually asking. They're like, well, what's this? Well, I just explained that. And they don't listen. This is what they do.
I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Thank you very much. I know we all appreciate it. We look forward to our last show is going to be the first Sunday of December for this year, and then we'll be doing some more next year, hopefully. Taco and I are going to talk about that. Very likely we will continue with this. I'm also probably going to be in a debate sometime late November or in December. There's an anti-abortion person on Twitter who's challenged me. She's got quite a following and is interested in doing debate. I'm trying to reach out to an OBGYN I know so that she can team up with me to cover the medical aspects, since that's not my strong point in this. And we'll hopefully be doing this on Modern Day Debate, which brings in quite a large audience as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And a special thanks goes to our sponsors, the Canadian Atheists, and, of course, the Politics Discord. The link gets censored by the Discord bots for some reason. So I'll just tell you to circumvent that. It's at www.discord.gg/politics to get to the Politics Discord. I highly recommend it. It's a busy, active community, and I'm often on various channels related to atheism or whatnot that while I'm driving. So because that's usually mostly when I have time for it. Anyway, thank you, everybody, and we hope everyone had a good Halloween, and we'll talk to you later. For more information about Theist Helpline and the schedule for the upcoming shows, please take a look at www.theisthelpline.com.
Quick
Have a great day,
correction.
everybody. Sorry?
The Book of Daniel was somewhere between 167 and 164. Sorry, I misremembered the date. It's been a while since I talked about it.
Corrections are always welcome. Glad you brought it up. Thank you. Okay, take care, everybody.
Night.
Thank you, everyone. Right now.
All right. With that, y'all, I think we are about to wrap up. It has been fun in the sun. Those were some good conversations. I've already edited our title for the description, but I'm happy for all of you joining me here. Let's see if there's anywhere I can send us off to. Talk Heathen. The fantastic people at Talk Heathen are live right there. I'll even send them in chat. Not that they need my shout out, but we are all family. Skeptic because we don't believe in ghosts. Hee hee. Yes, anyway, with that, I want to send love out to my co-host, James W. We did a fantastic episode last night with a con artist, or the subject was a con artist. I love a guy trying to basically say, listen, we can't give in to idols. Money is what kills us. Buy my book. I mean, I had such an urge to say buy my DVD, even just then, because the Kent Hoven was just being channeled so strongly. But yes, send love to my co-host James W. with my entire panel tonight. Randolph and T-Jump and Taco and Ix and all the guests, as well as all of our lovely people in chat. Our mods who make this stream so great, and viewers like you who make this channel even possible. Please don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe, then hit that bell icon to all so you can join our live streams or see our premieres which will be incoming soon, hopefully a bunch of them. Or hey, why not leave a comment once the video is done after the show? Why not check out the Skeptic and Ranting Discord server in the description below? Lastly, thank you to everyone who has helped us with support, all the people who sent out super chats and super thanks, those that are channel members with our evolving badge system, which you can join just below, as well as checking out our Patreon at patreon.com/Amy Newman, and along with James W. We will see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z. Good night, y'all. Mwah, 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 mwah. La 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 la.